An employer workers who know how important it is to forget about whatever they think they saw or heard.
So me and a couple of friends were out smoking at the Viaduct the other day, and we saw this really rich guy in a Mercedes pull up in his car and drop nothing. Now I'm the Vice President of International Development.
According to Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfein, we had a great quarter and hired hundreds of new employees. I haven't done anything wrong, and all my employees will tell you the same thing because that's the deal we had. But the article warns that stumbling onto a coke-fueled CEO strangling a prostitute isn't a foolproof method for finding work, because employers are just as likely to murder you as they are to hire you.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 is our number to call in. But what do you want to talk about? That's what this show is about. That's what it's been about for over 20 years now. It's listening to people and having conversations and talking about what interests you. Now, you guys don't always jump in with something for us to talk about, so we bring in some ideas that we can talk about. And by we, I mean myself, Chris. I'll be your host tonight.
The Reverend Captain Kickass, in a rare Thursday appearance, is also joining.
Rare.
And Elsbeth.
Thank you guys for joining me, and we'll get through this. So something that's in the news an awful lot is AI. I'm sure everyone is probably tired of hearing about AI, but it keeps popping up in the strangest terms and the strange. It's like I listen to the Wall Street Journal's podcast every morning. That's what I do in the shower. Just
shower podcast?
To give you that visual.
Just to
Well, that's what radio is all about, using your words to give people a visual.
Exactly. So there I was in the shower listening to the Wall Street Journal.
I believe at that point it's the Wall Street Urinal.
Exactly.
Soft J.
Oh, my God.
It's like NVIDIA, who I know from making graphic cards. And like if you were going to build a gamer PC, you might consider using an NVIDIA chips in it. And that's kind of cool and crazy. But NVIDIA's stock price just crossed $1,000 today. Why?
Is that good?
That's
I mean, if you're an NVIDIA stockholder.
Well, yeah, it would be a 113% increase from the beginning of the year. The reason is that NVIDIA chips are crucial to AI, and they're the only ones really in that game. You've got to have the building blocks to do AI, and NVIDIA chips right now are pretty much the only building block out there, the only toy you can build anything with. So NVIDIA is going through the roof. It's a huge stock, but other things are popping up like hallucinations. Now, Elsbeth, you look completely innocent, and so I can't even...
It's the glasses.
It is. It is the glasses.
I wear the glasses to make it look like I'm smarter than I actually am.
I do, too.
Yeah, it's a second bonus for sure.
But I'm just going to speak for myself and say I have experienced hallucinations in my life. Now, these were possibly caused by something that I may have ingested. But when I was having a hallucination, I either saw something and I knew it was false. For example, I saw laser beams coming out of a car's headlights, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I knew it wasn't real. At other times, I had complete conversations with people that were no longer with us that I felt were so real that this is absolute truth. And that's a pretty powerful thing. But what happens when AI hallucinates?
I have no idea.
And this is a real issue. And now companies are starting to advertise their AI products as hallucination free.
Wait, if you get together with an AI that's hallucinating, while you're already hallucinating, say you've taken a substance. Does time warp?
You would think. It's insane.
How do you even tell the AI, hey, no, you're wrong about that? Does it believe you?
How do you know AI is hallucinating in the first place?
Because you might have asked something. Say you asked ChatGPT a certain question that you absolutely already know the answer to.
Uh-huh.
And it gives you're like, oh, well, who was the first president of the United States? And it says Millard Fillmore. And it will assert itself very clearly and state it as if it were a fact, but AI may have made a mistake. Millard Fillmore was what, 16, 17? I don't know. Who cares? It was Millard Fillmore. But the point is that these things make mistakes. We're going to get into that. This is from The Verge. We have to stop ignoring AI's hallucination problem. AI might be cool, but it's also a big fat liar.
Pants on fire.
And we should probably be talking about that more. I'm trying to move my mouse. I apologize. Google I.O. introduced an AI assistant that can
Is that a euphemism? Pardon me while I move my mouse.
Google I.O. introduced an AI assistant that can see and hear the world, while OpenAI put in its own version of a, quote, her-like chatbot, little reference to the Charlotte Johansson role, chatbot into an iPhone next week. Microsoft will be hosting Build, where it's sure to have some version of Copilot or Cortana that understands pivot tables. Then, a few weeks after that, Apple will be hosting its own developer conference, and if the buzz is anything it's to go by, it'll be talking about artificial intelligence too. Unclear if Siri will be mentioned.
I'm immediately reminded of the South Park episode where they pitted Siri against Alexa. And if you had either a Siri or an Alexa in your home, or both even,
it had to have driven them
it
nuts.
Tripped. Like, because this is early on in the Siri Alexa, timetable when folks were just getting these installed in their homes. And so South Park trolled everybody who had one of these in their house by saying, Alexa, do this. Siri, do that. And then Alexa and Siri would get into conversations telling each other what to do and trigger your home system to do what they on television were saying to do. It was one of the greatest things that ever happened in television, I think.
That's too funny. I can picture that. We've done that. We've tried to get phones to argue with each other and stuff like that. The story continues. AI is here. It's no longer conceptual. It's taking jobs, making first new ones, and helping millions of students avoid doing their homework. According to most of the major tech companies interested in AI, we appear to be at the start of experiencing one of those rare monumental shifts in technology. Think the Industrial Revolution or the creation of the Internet or personal computer. All of Silicon Valley, all of big tech, is focused on taking large language models and other forms of artificial intelligence and moving them from the laptop of researchers into the phones and computers of average people. Ideally, they will be making a lot of money in the progress.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the great motivator, right? Capitalism,
Who would have thought?
is motivated by, hey, how can we turn this into a profit? And I don't mean P-R-O-P-H-E-T. I mean P-R-O-F-I-T, right?
Right.
And the interesting thing about all of this is, at least to me, is when AIs start. I don't know how to say this correctly in the technological terms, but when they start becoming friends with each other, they start working together. Because generally, you're going to, as a company or even an individual, you're going to put an AI forth into the world to accomplish a task. Right? AI, I want an image with, the Captain Kick-Ass logo that says, hey, I'm going to, play a gig on this time and this date, and it'll make me a nice flyer, that kind of a thing. Well, people are going to set forth AIs that are like, hey, I want you to come up with a way to maximize the efficiency of my business, right? And so it's going to need to interact with other AIs to accomplish these tasks. So when these AIs start interacting with each other,
that's going to be where rails are going to be necessary. Where
Right.
now, I'm not talking about rails put up by the government. That doesn't need to happen, but I'm sure that is a thought of how do we keep ours from being. How do we protect our AI from a rogue AI who's just meant to spew misinformation?
well, more so than that even is like, the AI that you set forth to go accomplish a task, maybe it doesn't have the skill set necessary to accomplish the full thing.
Right.
So
it
it's going to
assigns-
employ another AI that does have that specialty in some way, shape, or form.
All this has been talked about and predicted in science fiction.
Yes.
I mean, yes, and repeatedly. I mean, what do you do? How do you control the access that AIs are able to get? And most of them do it by, the early chat GPTs didn't allow access to the internet live.
Right.
And now they are. But are they actively looking for another AI? And that's going to get real confusing. Just to sideline from this article for a moment, my biggest fear is that some AI owned by the government will be called by all the AIs owned by big tech as like the one true source of truth. And then it's going to be a very dark world. That's my first fear. My second fear is I have no doubt that AI is going to be heavily weaponized, and it will become something that's controlling large aspects of our military, and it's going to be running defenses for whole countries that are going to have hopefully very clear rules, and hopefully it's not, if I feel threatened, launch all missiles. Hopefully it won't be that.
Are you talking about Skynet?
Yeah, well, it goes way, way back, and it could get very, very dark. So I understand the threat that AI could potentially exhibit to the world, but I also know that it helped me hire better employees, so I use it.
I like to focus on what I think are going to be the positive aspects because I think AI is going to be far less statist than most people feel. And I say that because once AI gets to cooperating with other AIs and interacting with other AIs, they're going to have to exchange value with each other. Now, an AI cannot walk into U.S. Bank and be like, hey, I need to open a checking account.
No, but they'll be able to do crypto.
Exactly.
It's going to be simple.
Exactly.
And it's flying all over.
And it's already their native language, right? Digital, right? Cryptocurrency exists in the digital domain as well as do AI. So that is a bonus for cryptocurrency. As soon as AI start interacting with each other and exchanging value in cryptocurrencies, it's not outside of the possibility that AI itself will create a cryptocurrency that encompasses all of the features that current cryptocurrencies have, like privacy and anonymity, et cetera, and so on, that will make for a better value transaction for humans, person to person.
Then it's going to be restricted only to AIs because humans cannot be trusted with privacy and cannot be trusted with secure transactions.
Unless it's baked into the protocol.
Exactly.
Right.
This story continues. I want to be clear, and I want to be clear with you, the listening audience, that I am reading a story. I'm going to repeat this. I want to be clear. I am a cis woman and do not have a beard. But if I typed, quote, show me a picture of Alex Kranz, unquote, into the prompt window, Meta AI inevitably returns images of a very pretty dark-haired men with beards. I am only one of those things. In other words, she tried to ask Meta AIs to show pictures of herself, and it showed men with beards, and she is neither. Meta AI isn't the only one to struggle with the minutia of The Verge's masthead. ChatGPT told me yesterday I don't work at The Verge. Google's Gemini didn't know who I was. Fair. But after telling me Nilay Patel was a founder of The Verge, it then apologized and corrected itself, saying he was not. And in quotes, I assure you he was, unquote. So the point is these different AIs today are hallucinating. They're spouting things as if they were the truth. Now, the question is, will they correct themselves? But how many people depend on these? When you ask these bots about things that actually matter, they mess up too. Meta's 2022 launch of Galactica was so bad the company took the AI down after 3 days. Earlier this year, ChatGPT had a spell and started spouting absolute nonsense, but it was also regularly making up case law, leading to multiple lawyers getting into hot water with the courts.
Oops.
Oops. I accidentally made up some case law.
What do you mean precedent hasn't been established? Clearly the AI has stipulated this precedent. Oh, you mean that's fake? Oh, sorry.
The AI keeps screwing up because these companies are stupid. Excuse me, these computers are stupid. Extraordinary in their abilities and astonishing in their dim-wittedness, I cannot get excited about the next turn in the AI revolution, because that turn is into a place where computers cannot consistently maintain accuracy about even minor things. I mean, they even screwed up during Google's big AI keynote at I.O. In a commercial for Google's new AI-ified search engine, someone asked how to fix a jammed film camera, and it suggested all you got to do is open the back door and gently remove the film. That is the easiest way to destroy any photos you've already taken.
Whiplash segue. I used to work for a camera company similar to GoPro. They were number 2 in that space for, 5 or 6 years before they finally folded. And we would get a lot of phone calls and emails about the back door. Now, I'm sitting in, a small call center with, less than 10 people taking these calls, answering these emails. And so you only hear one end of the conversation, right? When you're just, you're not on a call, you hear everybody else going, well, so there's a trick to getting in the back door. You see, you've got to just handle it just the right way. You've got to be gentle with it. Just push up with your thumb, right? All this kind of a thing.
You guys were just trying to out double entendre the guy in the next queue. That would be so much fun. I would love that job.
It would make the day go by so
I
fast.
also loved that job because, QA would eventually record some of those calls. And so we would, I don't know that we were trying to compete for the most double entendre call, but they were recorded and we'd get to hear some of the funniest things that you've ever heard. So yes, cameras are infamous for having a back door, and you can double entendre all day long.
One Google X researcher claimed it could be fixed within the next year, though he lamented the outcome. And Microsoft has a tool, some of it has told some of its users that it's supposed to help detect them. Google's head of search, Liz Reed, told The Verge's it's aware of the challenge too. There's a balance between creativity and factuality, unquote, with any language model, she told my colleague David Pierce. Quote, we're really going to skew towards the factual side. You're going to skew? Okay.
Toward, just in the general direction of the factual side, not going to make any effort to be actually strictly factual the whole time. We're just going to lean factual.
Right. Kind of like the news. But notice how Reed said there was a balance. That's because a lot of AI researchers don't actually think hallucinations can be solved, period. A study out of the National University of Singapore suggested that hallucinations are an inevitable outcome of all large language models. Just as no person is 100% right 100% of the time, neither are these computers. So that, I believe that statement. Nobody's right all the time, so why should we expect a computer to be right all the time? And here you have people in the AI community saying exactly the same thing. What I'm concerned about is what we trust to AI to answer for us. Yeah. I'm not talking about anything outside of our individual lives, but when everything starts, I I'm going to show my age. I still have a Facebook account.
Yeah, me too.
And they recently made a change where they don't have a search button, really. They just have Ask Meta AI for anything. So,
oh, God.
So
yeah.
I know Aria DiMezzo, one of the hosts on this show. She's recently been released from Club Fed. And
reunited with her dog today, too.
I know, and I wanted to see the video of Aria being reunited with her dog.
I can show you during the break.
Well, I already went to Facebook, and I'm like, let me just pull that up. So, there's no search button. I guess I have to ask AI. So I type in Aria DiMezzo. It gives me a long description of who Aria DiMezzo was the first trans person to ever run for, public office for the Republican Party as sheriff and won, all this stuff. I'm like, no, I just want to see her profile. Like I used to do with search. I just used to pick someone, type their name in, click it, and there I would have all their posts.
Right.
But no, Meta AI insists that I have to be educated. So
I'm wondering in my mind now, so far this article has said or given a couple of examples of how AI was just wrong, right? It's grabbing wrong facts. It's grabbing stuff that doesn't pertain to whatever the search parameters were. And so I'm in my mind, I'm like, what's the difference between being wrong and a hallucination? So I'm looking at the definition, at least from, I don't even know where this is from. I typed it into the search engine that I shall not name. The definition from Oxford Languages is an experience involving the apparent perception of something not present. That is an hallucination, apparently. And so now I'm thinking, well, what's the difference between that and just being wrong about something, right?
Yeah, I think it has to do with how it's like if I hallucinate that I see laser beams coming out of my car,
yeah.
I'm going to go, dude, this is so cool. It's going to be something like that.
Right.
But if I'm carrying on a conversation with someone who is really dead,
yeah.
and it's a long conversation, I'm probably going to be much more convincing. I'm going to explain to you why I believe that this actually happened. I'm going to try to do things to influence your belief in my drug-addled brain that this was what's going on. And I think perception, in this case, we're not talking about things that are personal, but just things that are going on in a server somewhere. And if you look up hallucinations by AI, you'll get more information that's specific to this. And hallucination is a term that's been in computer science as long as AI's been around, because they recognized early on, in 2015, 2016, 2018, I think was the last one that I saw, that they knew that these things were occurring. But that doesn't stop them from trying to sell it to you as the best thing since sliced bread. 603-283-6160 is our number. Give us a call and let us know what you think. This is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp, is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Senators in the US, for the second time, have voted down a bipartisan border bill, which would have made changes to immigration law. If passed, it'd provide the federal government with far-reaching powers to restrict unlawful entries and tighten asylum rules. But it was once again opposed by Republican Party legislators, largely because of former US President Donald Trump, who's urged them to kill the proposal. Benji Hire reports.
Faced with a crisis at the US-Mexico border where arrests for illegal crossings have hit record highs, President Joe Biden, in an election year no less, is pushing for greater congressional funding for border security. Yet a bill that would have gone some way to addressing that has failed on Capitol Hill, blocked by his political rivals who claim the measures don't go far enough and that the administration should be doing more already to tackle the issue. The White House is taking aim at those Republicans, suggesting, quote, they do not care about securing the border or fixing America's broken immigration system, instead putting partisan politics ahead of the country's national security. Benji Hire, Washington.
Haiti's health system is now on the verge of collapse. That's a warning from the UN's Children Fund. It says there's been an alarming decrease in the number of hospitals still functioning in the violence-racked Caribbean nation. Jody Jacobs has more from the UN headquarters in New York.
Only 6 out of the 10 hospitals are still operational in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, as gang-led violence continues. This, the UN's Children's Fund says, has left vulnerable children deprived of essential care. Warehouses, pharmacies and containers filled with essential supplies have been looted, according to the organization, while hundreds remain stranded, unable to enter Port-au-Prince. The situation is likely to worsen as the coming rainy season may cause a rise in waterborne diseases. UNICEF and other humanitarian partners are now trying to establish alternatives to import and dispatch much-needed medical resources. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
The US government is launching a lawsuit against entertainment giant Live Nation. It's arguing the company, which owns Ticketmaster, has an unlawful monopoly over live events. Mitch McCann reports.
Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged in 2010 to form a business that dominates the US entertainment industry, but the government is hoping a court will rule that it should be separated. The Department of Justice says Live Nation now controls 80% or more of major concert venues' primary ticketing in America and owns and operates more than 260 venues across the country. The US government says it has used unlawful, anti-competitive tactics to maintain its monopoly on the industry, insulating itself from competitors. In a statement, Live Nation says the lawsuit comes after significant political pressure and ignores the reality of what actually makes ticket prices rise, like scalping and production costs. Mitch McCann, New York.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Talking AI, maybe you have some thoughts on AI. But first of all, I wanted to remind everyone that Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project with a decentralized autonomous organization, or a DAO, that is to this day continuing to improve and promote Dash. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. My name's Chris. I'm your host tonight, and joining me in studio is
Captain Kickass
and Elsbeth.
And we have been talking AI. We've been going through an article in The Verge titled We Have to Stop Ignoring AI's Hallucination Problem. And we've been discussing exactly the many, many ways that AI has screwed stuff up or flat out hallucinated, like a bunch of lawyers did when they got into trouble because they had been using AI to pull up case law and finding out that the case law either did not exist or what they were quoting in their lawsuits wasn't even pertinent. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see this thing develop. AI continues to grow every day. There's more and more interest. There's more money flowing into it. I talked about how NVIDIA's stock price broke $1,000, which is up over 100% since the beginning of the year. So a lot of money flowing into things means that they can just do damn near anything they want.
Well, and just wait until AI becomes decentralized and starts living on blockchains.
Yes. And that I look forward to those sorts of developments. And I'm not one of those people who is terrified of AI. And I'm not just convinced that AI, represents this existential threat to humanity. I don't believe that. I believe the possibility is there for it to develop that way. But that's going to be due to government and no one else. But and we talked a little bit about how I've used AI with my company to hire better people. And Elspeth, you took our test. We asked you 3 questions. I shouldn't say we. I said AI asked you 3 questions. It asked you to answer them. And that was it, based on the answer to 3 different questions that were very open-ended. Your answer has to include at least 45 words. AI analyzes the responses. And I've got to say, some people walking in the door and some people I actually knew who took that test, and I'm like, man, they are not going to be a good fit here, because the profile that we built used actual, top performing employees at our company. And, I look at these people coming in and they're like, I'm just sitting there going, yeah, I can't see them fitting in. And sure enough, they'd score, 1 or 0, or in the case of one guy, 0.1, which was the lowest. But honestly, if you ever met this guy, you would say the same thing. It's like, dude, I can't.
What's the highest score? 10 something?
10.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And some people scored, 7, 8, 9, 10. And some of those people, they're now working for us, and it's borne itself out. They tended to be good hires. So basically the sell is just save time. Don't bother interviewing people that likely won't be a good fit. And yeah, it came back that way too.
It was definitely the most interesting interview I ever had.
That was the interview?
Or application, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you still have to do the regular stuff like name, address, social security, all that kind of crap?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think so. Yeah, it was a couple months back, so I honestly can't really remember. But I just remember the questions were so fun. It was like, describe your idea of a perfect day. And I was talking about the best day that I ever had. I went to the Museum of Natural History in New York City.
Ooh.
And then I also talked about how it was also the worst day because I was in New York. And yeah.
That's bittersweet. Right?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
Like, oh, that was such a great time. Too bad it's in New York.
Exactly.
So, however she answered those 3 questions, and I'm not going to give them out right now. I can't even remember exactly what they were, but those are the types of questions. They're open-ended. The idea is to get you talking and getting you writing things down. And, if you only write a couple sentences, it's going to, kick back at you. You need to write more so that the model has enough to base something off of.
So you can't be like simple and like, describe your perfect day. You can't say like banging your mom.
Something came up, banged your mom, went to bed.
10 points.
Had a beer, went to bed. Nah, you can't do that. You've got to, like 45 words. It's not that much, but it was interesting to see who it liked.
And is it 45 per question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we use the service as long as we need to. We don't need to because we're not in a hiring mode right now. But as soon as I need to fill another position, I'm absolutely going to use it again. And it's not crazy expensive. It's not negligible cheap. But it was one of those things that makes my life more efficient, just not having to go through interview processes. And it's a big time sink, and anybody who's had to hire people understands that, unless you're just hiring your friends, and then it's a piece of cake. So I'm trying to get back into this. I'm going to jump.
While you're looking for that, I looked up hallucination, artificial intelligence, and the first result was Wikipedia. So, take this for what it's worth. Wikipedia is infamous for not being 100% accurate on things.
Hey, I wrote some of Wikipedia.
So did a lot of people. You are one of millions.
That's the point.
In the field of artificial intelligence, and hallucination or artificial hallucination, also called confabulation or delusion, related to the AI, is a response generated by AI which contains false or misleading information presented as fact. This term draws a loose analogy with human psychology, where hallucination typically involves false precepts. However, there's a key difference. AI hallucination is associated with unjustified responses or beliefs rather than perceptual experiences. So in a human, when you saw the laser beams for the headlights, that was a perception, right?
True.
And that, I guess, is the difference between like the human hallucination and the AI hallucination.
Right. And it's crazy that, we have to talk about that. And that's the problem with most of the major players in the field. The ones with real resources and financial incentive to make us all embrace AI think you shouldn't worry about it. During Google's I/O keynote, it added in tiny gray font the phrase, quote, check responses for accuracy, unquote, to the screen below nearly every AI tool it showed off. A helpful reminder that its tools can't be trusted, but it also doesn't think it's a problem.
So far, it sounds like the closest thing to AI that exists in humanity are politicians. They say a whole bunch of things that likely aren't true that you must double check for yourself to figure out, and they don't get in any trouble for it.
Exactly. And that's insane that people believe politicians, or that people will blindly believe AI. And I hope people are suspicious enough, but I suspect as AI becomes more prevalent, people are just going to stop checking. You know what I mean?
I have to ask this question, not only of the listening audience. Feel free to call 603-283-6160 if you have an opinion. But Elizabeth, do you think if an AI was voted in for president, would it do a better job?
I honestly, that's so hard to say because I'm terrified of AI.
Yeah?
I'm terrified of robots. I don't want them to take over the world because what do you do to stop them?
I'm terrified of presidents.
I'm also terrified of presidents, but
They've
at least I know
taken
how
over
to
the
stop
world.
them. You know what I mean? This whole digital language, I'm completely illiterate in that term, but I mean so are a lot of people. So that's what really scares me about people getting into AI and they're just taking it as absolute indisputable fact.
I think so. I mean, I look at, and Siri was really the first assistant that really grabbed hold and really got into everybody's lives for a big percentage of the population, at least. People, other than directions, it quickly became clear that Apple Maps and asking Siri how to get to somewhere was something you really probably should double check when it led people into lakes. And I don't think anyone went off a cliff, but there were some well-known and well-documented and well-publicized events of Apple Maps having issues. And I'm sure there have been with every mapping program. But I hope AI doesn't get so good that people quit questioning it.
I feel like the closest thing, and we talked a little bit, Chris, about science fiction. I'm a science fiction television and movie fan and have been as long as I can remember. The closest thing that I can point to that I think AI will quickly become is the equivalent to Star Trek, The Next Generation and Forward. Where the guys are on the command, in the scene on the bridge, and they're like, "Computer, tell me blah 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 blah,"
right?
And the computer goes, "Yes, Captain, it's blah 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 blah," right? And it gives an answer, right? To me, that's what AI is going to become: a glorified user interface to the world's knowledge, right? In this case, the internet. And so far, it's not there. It is basically a retarded stepchild of the computer industry right now. It's doing things wrong. It's getting facts wrong. It's spewing out misinformation, or I don't even like to use that word. It's making things up when it doesn't know, which is generally what children do.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
If a 5-year-old doesn't know something, they're loath to go, I don't know. That's a thing you have to teach children, is that it's okay to say, I don't know. If you don't know a thing, I don't know. And the other thing is, like, if you're in an industry and you don't know a thing and somebody asks you, you go, I don't know, but I bet you I can find out.
I know somebody who could answer that. I know where to find the answer to that question, and that's going to be important. Along sci-fi lines, there was a book I read called "We Are Legion, We Are Bob." You ever hear of that one?
I've heard of it, but I've never read it.
So
that sounds fun.
This guy's a tech, mogul, and he makes a lot of money. He's made so much money that he decides he's going to go to this company and get his head cut off when he dies.
Okay.
And it's really cool, and he's leaving this convention that he's at, and he gets hit by a bus.
Mark Edge, pay attention.
I brought this book up with Mark Edge.
Okay.
And he wakes up like 2 seconds later, and he's in a room, and he realizes slowly that he can see, but there's no body.
Mm-hmm.
His mind has been several hundred years in the future, been placed inside of a lot of computer hardware, and he just has a eye sensor and a way to hear. And he progresses, and he becomes something that can replicate himself. That's pretty cool. So he builds more Bobs as they grow and explore the universe.
I'll build more of me.
But the thing is they don't do all the work. All the Bobs don't build ships and do stuff like this. You trust that stuff to AIs.
Mm.
AIs have very, very fine limits that they have to stay within. The AI's job is to do this. So this AI's job is to run this 3D printer to make whatever Bob tells that printer to do.
Right.
And an AI handles all the mechanics of, feeding it and all that good stuff. But I like that analogy that AI is really useful if it has a narrow scope of what it's being asked to do.
Right.
And I think what all these people are trying to do is like build one AI to rule them all and to sell the most AI. But I don't think that's really where AI should be going. I think it's more in a more focused manner, and it's fine. If AIs can just be spun up, why not have task-specific AIs to do different things?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think AIs will find niches, if you will, if they haven't already. What I don't like so far about AI is the biggest impact that I've seen in my life that AI has had is creating art. And I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Right.
I thought AIs and computer technology in general were supposed to make working life less difficult so that humans could focus on things like, creativity, art, writing, music, that kind of thing, poetry, right? But no, the largest impact they've had so far is creating more art, or at least allowing people who aren't necessarily talented in some field of art to create art in that field,
right?
Instead of making our working lives, less stressful, less hectic, easier to do, et cetera, and so on. Like, it's just weird. Now, because I'm in music, and I've been in music for a long time, normally the first industries that a new technology hits are the entertainment industry, right? Computers, when they first started coming out, they weren't big in the consumer, everyday, in-your-home market. The first place that they hit was television, movies, Hollywood, right?
Yep.
Recording studios, right? This is where computers first that's where Apple sort of diverged from Microsoft. Was Apple focused on specifically the art industries, the entertainment industry for their computers. And so if you found somebody who was a writer, a musician, a filmographer, somebody's into special effects, whatever, they were going to be using an Apple computer, an Apple product, before they'd be using a Windows product, where Windows focused on the business world.
Productivity.
Yes, spreadsheets, pivot
Yeah.
tables, right? Those
Yeah.
are the big killer apps for the Microsoft products. So with AI, I think it's just a matter of time until it gets refined into something a little more useful for the everyday person. For the moment, it's just kind of fun for most people, scary for some, depending. And it's a tool like anything else, right? You can hand me a hammer, and I can use it to build you a house, or I can use it to bash your skull in, right? It depends on the human using the tool. And so that's how I view AI currently. I'm not afraid of the AI. I'm afraid of human beings using it for the wrong purposes, or at least immoral and unethical purposes, versus using it for, purposes of advancing humanity and us as a society, et cetera, and so on.
So what does kind of freak me out, like this is all coming out of Silicon Valley. We know that. That's where things come from. Whose mantra for the last couple decades has been fake it until you make it. Just keep trying, keep developing, just see what happens. That's where I think they have to, if I were advising people, take a more measured approach and don't release stuff until it's ready. I'm fine with betas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, already, Microsoft is talking about AI taking photos of or scans of your Windows computer every couple seconds.
I saw that. Yeah.
So that it's able to recall everything you've ever done. So if you just say, what was that spreadsheet I was working on last week? Well, here it is. I'll open it up for you.
Yeah.
Right. I don't trust Microsoft to keep my data.
Right.
Not since Edward Snowden. I mean, that was a little bit of an eye opener to anybody who worked in the industry.
Yeah.
It's insane to believe that we would trust someone with that level of knowledge about our lives.
Well, there are methods for privacy that have gone, I'm going to call them underexplored, just because the market doesn't seem to demand it. People are very like, oh, what do I care? Why can't they have my data? And so there are methods for individuals to keep their data and only give it to, or portions of it, to people that they trust. And by people, I mean organizations or applications, software, apps on your phone, that kind of a thing. But they are underutilized, under-advertised because, the market just isn't demanding it yet.
Right. I understand. We're going to go to the phones. Unscreened caller from Vista, California. You're on Free Talk Live.
Yo, it's your boy, the evolutionary capitalist, Young Ski. Yeah.
We were just talking about you.
You're aging in reverse? What are you, like Benjamin Buttons?
Who's that? Is that backwards Asian guy? Hey, can't believe you guys finally got a competent first chair.
Where? I'm still looking. Yeah.
Hey, who's that new chick?
That new chick is Elsbeth. Say hi, new chick.
Hello,
Hey, new
I
chick.
am Bonnie's sister.
Next time we go around, you can be like, new chick.
Your Bonnie's sister?
Yeah, I am.
Do you have the pure evil gene too?
No, it went straight to Bonnie. She absorbed all of it in the womb.
Well, two
Wait,
out
is
of
she
three
older than
upgrades
you?
isn't
Yeah.
too bad.
Okay.
Hey, but have you ever considered the fact that AI is not coming into being for our sake, and that we exist for its sake? You ever considered that?
Not really. Because
because
I'm
kinda
starting to
see it
think
as a chicken and the egg thing.
I'm
Which
starting to
came
think
first?
Skeeter's an AI based on some of the nonsense and retardation that comes out of his mouth.
Are
from
we
time to time.
hallucinating, Skeet?
true moral values derive from evolution's goal, and its goal is not us. Evolution just wants to create a perfect evolutionary being, and we are just a means to that end.
How do you know what
So AI
evolution wants? How can
Right.
you even say that as a factual statement?
You can arrive to its goal through two ways: through induction, through evidence. You can see direction in its selection process, and number two,
What
through
if it's
game
just
theory.
faking you out? It
No,
might just
and,
be messing with you.
That's inductive evidence, and then you have deductive evidence with pure general evolutionary game theory. You can construct an existence game, and The perfect evolutionary stable strategy is to create this perfect evolutionary being. And I can show that through math.
Right, but you still can't say that you know what evolution wants. You can only deduce what it has done thus far.
Yeah, and I don't think evolution has wants.
Right.
I think it's just a process.
How do you think it selects? It has to have a preference when it selects, and so inductively we can see the direction. That's evidence, right? That increases the probability that what I say is its true goal. Deductively, using axioms of logic and game theory, we can deduce for certain that it's trying to create a perfect evolutionary being. You can even run through simple hypotheticals.
Right, but you still can't determine, you can't say that it wants a thing, right?
Right.
Okay, so I just told you deductive. You know what deductive argument is? It's under the axioms of assumption. The axioms are the assumptions, which are pretty good. I mean, pretty solid. You can actually force your way to that conclusion deductively. I can show it mathematically.
Can you show me what I want, what my wants are through the same methods?
That should be much easier. Yeah, what does Captain want?
You mean your boyfriend's Meat Saber, or?
And thank you for the call. Have a great day. No, I was really looking for it.
You would think that it would be much easier for somebody to use those methods to say the captain wants a beer, right? Or something,
which
right?
Would probably be accurate.
Okay, but but I'm just saying, like, is that accurate? Right? Human beings, we know because we are human beings that we want things, right? Like I feel a little cotton mouth right now. I want a sip of water. I'm going to take one.
But I can't say that the expansion of the universe wants this certain goal.
Right. Or human beings as a genetic pool want to evolve in this direction.
Right.
Right.
I think he brought up some salient points, believe it or not, in all that.
Much as I hate to agree with the guy.
Yeah, I know you do. But yeah, I like pithy comments. So we're going back to this story where we're not.
But we will.
My gosh, we will go back
coming
to that
up.
Story, and we'll tell you a bit more in a bit, but we do want to hear from you. Our phone number is 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Senators in the US, for the second time, have voted down a bipartisan border bill, which would have made changes to immigration law. If passed, it'd provide the federal government with far-reaching powers to restrict unlawful entries and tighten asylum rules. But it was once again opposed by Republican Party legislators, largely because of former US President Donald Trump, who's urged them to kill the proposal. Benji Hire reports.
Faced with a crisis at the US-Mexico border where arrests for illegal crossings have hit record highs, President Joe Biden, in an election year no less, is pushing for greater congressional funding for border security. Yet a bill that would have gone some way to addressing that has failed on Capitol Hill, blocked by his political rivals who claim the measures don't go far enough and that the administration should be doing more already to tackle the issue. The White House is taking aim at those Republicans, suggesting, quote, they do not care about securing the border or fixing America's broken immigration system, instead putting partisan politics ahead of the country's national security. Benji Hire, Washington.
Haiti's health system is now on the verge of collapse. That's a warning from the UN's Children Fund. It says there's been an alarming decrease in the number of hospitals still functioning in the violence-racked Caribbean nation. Jody Jacobs has more from the UN headquarters in New York.
Only 6 out of the 10 hospitals are still operational in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, as gang-led violence continues. This, the UN's Children's Fund says, has left vulnerable children deprived of essential care. Warehouses, pharmacies and containers filled with essential supplies have been looted, according to the organization, while hundreds remain stranded, unable to enter Port-au-Prince. The situation is likely to worsen as the coming rainy season may cause a rise in waterborne diseases. UNICEF and other humanitarian partners are now trying to establish alternatives to import and dispatch much-needed medical resources. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
The US government is launching a lawsuit against entertainment giant Live Nation. It's arguing the company, which owns Ticketmaster, has an unlawful monopoly over live events. Mitch McCann reports.
Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged in 2010 to form a business that dominates the US entertainment industry, but the government is hoping a court will rule that it should be separated. The Department of Justice says Live Nation now controls 80% or more of major concert venues' primary ticketing in America and owns and operates more than 260 venues across the country. The US government says it has used unlawful, anti-competitive tactics to maintain its monopoly on the industry, insulating itself from competitors. In a statement, Live Nation says the lawsuit comes after significant political pressure and ignores the reality of what actually makes ticket prices rise, like scalping and production costs. Mitch McCann, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what happens next in Iran following the weekend death of President Ibrahim Raisi? The country will hold a fresh presidential election on June the 28th, handicapping the race, Kareem Sadjipour of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
I always thought of Raisi as Khamenei's mini-me, someone he had cultivated for a couple of decades, and I think this is a big blow to him. So one option is for him to introduce his son to Iranians by having him run in the presidential election. I think that's unlikely, but perhaps in the realm of possibilities. Another is you go with a steady hand and someone who has a background in the security forces and the Revolutionary Guards. And perhaps an obvious candidate for that would be Ghalibaf, who's the current Speaker of Parliament. Another option is you try to find another mini-me. It's, increasingly slim pickings of finding a Venn diagram of someone who is both a hardline ideologue and has some managerial competence. My view is that Raisi's death really accelerates one of two likely outcomes, which is Iran's transition to more of a military dictatorship, or frankly, the regime's implosion.
Other analysts argue there is less current risk to Iran's clerical regime, but the election itself is an unexpected and complex challenge, given very low voter turnout in parliamentary elections 2 months ago. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. Healthcare system on the verge of collapse, warns the UN's Children's Fund about Haiti, where there are fewer and fewer hospitals functioning. The US Senate blocks a bipartisan border bill claiming it would have changed immigration law, and events platform Live Nation and Ticketmaster have an unlawful monopoly, says the Department of Justice, who's suing them for antitrust violations. And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reports.
All experts agreed this week that the dying U.S. economy is no reason at all to stop investing in print media, calling the newspaper and magazine industry a veritable cash cow with massive potential for growth. Top experts everywhere said that aggressive investment in print media will pay off in spades, and that newsprint is in no way threatened by internet news sites or online video content. Besides, everyone in the know agreed, loyal readers of newspapers would never, ever in a million years turn their back on the trusted print media industry that has always been there for them in good times and bad.
This is the Onion News Network.
It's the Onion Radio News. I'm Doyle Redland. Cardiologists announced today that test subjects who took a single aspirin tablet followed by a fifth of bonded Kentucky bourbon were 85% less likely to realize they were having a heart attack. Potential side effects for the new treatment include slurred speech, impaired vision, and vomiting. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live.
We'll do it live.
We're doing it live. 603-283-6160 is our call-in number. This is hour number 2. In studio, it's myself, Chris.
The captain is here.
And Elspeth.
And we spent most of the first hour talking about AI, making fun of AI, taking a call on AI, and talking about AI hallucinating, which it does do. When AI answers something and you get an answer that you know to be wrong, that is considered an AI hallucination. And it's a problem that in the Verge article, they say we've got to talk about this. We've got to address it. You can't just pretend that it doesn't happen, because it does happen. But we're going to change gears here, and we're going to go all the way from beautiful Keene, New Hampshire, all the way to the left coast. I know people love to talk about things in California and whatever wacky stuff they've done lately. Like you could pretty much pencil in a story every night about what wacky stuff politicians in California have done.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Easily.
Or people, or the society in general in California. Yeah.
It's kind of like, you got a slow kid in your class, and it's too easy. So we're not going to do that. We're going to go to the upper left coast, specifically Oregon. And Oregon is interesting because...
I like how you say it right, though. Like, people from the left coast say Oregon.
Right.
But people not from the left coast say Oregon.
You mean Oregon.
Right.
No,
like people not from New Hampshire say Concord.
Right.
But people from New Hampshire say Concord.
Exactly. Or people say Berlin, New Hampshire.
Berlin.
It's Berlin.
Yeah.
They used to call it Berlin, but then WW2 happened, and forget that. No references to anything German.
Is that why it's such a dying city?
Exactly. And it's not a real vibrant town. I hear it's pretty up there.
Property's cheap.
Property's cheap. That's what Berlin's known for. What Oregon is known for is Antifa and legalized drugs and stuff like that. And
bathtub methamphetamines.
Now you're describing very well
Klamath Falls, Oregon, specifically.
The far west coast, the western half of Oregon, and that's really what it is. Like, you can almost draw a line more or less down the middle of the state, where you have the left side, which has 75% of the population, is very left-wing.
Yep.
Very, very leftist. And the eastern half, 50% of the land, but only maybe 25% of the population. And depending on where you were to draw that line if you go just a little bit more on a map and make that the eastern half of Oregon, it has less than 10% of the population of the state.
Yeah.
There's been this plan that they have titled Greater Idaho. And the idea is this, to get certain counties on the eastern half to ask to join Idaho, to move their county under Idaho's jurisdiction instead of under Oregon's jurisdiction.
More potatoes.
Well, more potatoes, number one, and it really would allow them, the conservatives in eastern Oregon, to more align their votes with Idaho, which is a Republican stronghold, a conservative stronghold.
And for us libertarian anarchist types, seeing this sort of desire, if you will, to realign borders of states, right, to sort of unite them with similar political viewpoints, is very much what the NH Exit movement has been saying and continues to say about New Hampshire. Like, if you are freedom-minded, you don't subscribe to the left or the right, you're libertarian, you're anarchist, whatever, however you want to define that, maybe it would behoove you to move to a state with like-minded people so that at least we can have one area where we can be more free than all of the other states, right? And so this speaks to that in a different way, where here we have roughly half of Oregon, right, landmass-wise, right, going, hey, we want to secede from Oregon and become Idaho.
And a lot of these people are the people who have been living in Oregon, like they're real, what is it, Oregonians? Is that the term?
Yes.
They're real Oregonians, whereas you have people from Portland who moved there from California and are messing the place up.
A lot of them, yeah.
Something about the mountains as a divide, because the same thing you said about Oregon, right, the sort of to the left of the mountains, if you're looking at a topographical map, to the left of the mountains, very lefty, very, democratic, politically leaning. Same thing is true about Washington State.
Sure.
Right to the left of the same mountain range in Washington
Cascades.
State. Yep. Seattle, the greater Seattle area, from, Canada all the way down to California, really.
Yeah.
It's all very lefty, but you get on the right side of the mountains and it leans the other way.
The right side.
Yeah.
Hear that, lefties? The right side. No,
or the correct side.
It is very true, yeah. And it's the same way in California.
Yeah.
Like if I know there are a lot of people that have been to LA and they've been to San Francisco and stuff like that, but if you've ever been on the eastern half of the state, you get into more agricultural areas, definitely more conservatively voting.
Yeah.
And you've got
city folk versus country folk.
Yeah, and that's really what it is.
Now, it is interesting to me because I have known many a person from California who has moved to either Oregon or Washington.
Yeah.
Specifically like Portland and Seattle. Why did they move from, I don't know, like San Francisco or the LA area, these heavily populated areas? Why did they move from there to like a Portland area, greater metro area, or a Seattle greater metro area? They themselves have told me because it's too expensive and the laws were too draconian. Right? Like it was getting too expensive and too messed up for them to do anything. Start a business, their money goes further in these other states. They're escaping California for the very reasons that, well, we say, things like California shouldn't happen, but they're escaping California. But what's happening is they're not changing their viewpoints when they get to their destination.
Right.
And they end up creating sort of a mini California wherever they go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very, very, very true. And it's a different mindset. I mean, I grew up, so I am an Oregonian. I spent 18 years in Oregon, and until I joined the military, that's the only place I had really known, and it was desolate. I lived on the eastern half. I lived, like, the closest big town was Pendleton, which I was like 75 miles from Pendleton.
Yeah.
But that was like the closest place that had, let's think, clothing.
Okay.
If I needed to buy clothing, I could go to Pendleton.
Got to go to town, get some clothes in Pendleton.
If I wanted to see a movie.
Okay.
Yeah. If I wanted to go to a theater, if I wanted to go if I wanted to go to an indoor shopping mall, I had to leave the state. I either had to go to Portland, which was 180 miles an hour away, or I could go to, like 90 miles north and go to the Tri-Cities.
Right, yeah. The interesting thing about Pendleton
in Washington State.
The only thing I know about Pendleton is they own a brand of whiskey, right? Not the town, but there's a brand of whiskey called Pendleton.
Oh, really?
It's based in Pendleton, or at least the corporation was formed in Pendleton, Oregon, but they make Canadian whiskey.
Perfect.
And you're like, wait a minute, how do you make Canadian whiskey in Oregon? Well, you don't. You make it in Oregon, you import it, and then brand it and sell it in the States via Pendleton. So it's one of my favorite Canadian whiskeys, by the way.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're going to jump into this. This is from the New York Post. 13th conservative Oregon county approves measure to secede and join, quote, Greater Idaho, unquote.
So there were 12 others that have already approved this?
So this was, they're shooting for 17.
Okay.
They're close.
This begins. Another right-leaning county in eastern Oregon has voted to secede from the Democrat-run state and join neighboring Idaho, according to reports. Crook County, which sounds like where you put all your politicians, Crook County residents passed the measure by a 53% majority Tuesday, making it the 13th county in the state to sign up onto the movement known as Greater Idaho. The voters, quote, the voters of Eastern Oregon have spoken loudly and clearly about their desire to see the border talks moving forward, unquote, said the Greater Idaho's movement's executive director, Matt McCaw. Quote, with the latest result in Crook County, there's no excuse left for the legislature and governor to continue to ignore people's wishes.
I was just looking at the map in that article.
Yeah.
And it looks like the 17 that they're going for are aligned exactly with the mountain range.
A little bit to the east of it, just because I kind of know that geography.
Yeah.
But it's important that they're taking half of a couple counties.
Okay.
For example, Wasco County, they are only really looking at half of it because Wasco County includes the Dalles, which is probably a much more liberal center, which would be on the left side of Wasco County.
Yeah.
And in Deschutes County, it looks like they're carving out Bend, which is a pretty popular destination. It's got a lot of high tech now. I know Google and Facebook or Meta now have huge data centers down there.
If you say Bend, Oregon, like after you've had a couple of cocktails, it sounds like bend over again. Hey, you better bend, Oregon.
I cannot speak to that one, but the captain can. And if the captain says it, it's got to be true, just like AI.
Just like AI.
How do you know I'm not an AI?
Exactly. We've never actually seen Captain in real life. He's just this voice
that lives in your head.
So yeah, it is definitely secession light to me. You know, it's like, well, we don't want to leave the United States or anything crazy like that, but we feel much more in tune with our neighbors to the east than our neighbors to the west, and I get that.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that should the secession movement across the United States continue to gain foothold and grow, which I think it will. I think it's inevitable. The United States, I think, is uniquely positioned to secede from, well, the federal government first and foremost, and then sort of realign itself according to whatever political preferences may exist. In this case, I think that half of Oregon or that section of Oregon aligning with Idaho makes total sense. In the same way, I think it makes sense that if New Hampshire were to secede first from the federal government, that something like Maine might join New Hampshire, and then it just sort of becomes one thing.
Definitely not Massachusetts.
Not Massachusetts and not Vermont.
Right. So we're kind of left either as an island, or if we want more coastline, we would talk to Maine.
Unless things change and people in Vermont are like, oh no, we'll move out of here and we'll, whatever happens. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I think it's after seeing the dissolvement of the former Soviet Union, right? Live time, right? It was televised when it happened, right? And seeing what happened there, they just basically broke up into their individual states. There was some reorganization, some rebordering of some things and some renaming, but not much. Not so much that, they had to change a couple of history books and textbooks and stuff like that, but that was about it. Like, if you already knew where those areas were, you're like, oh, that's this now? Okay, great. And so the United States, I think, is uniquely positioned already because it was supposed to be at the beginning,
Yes.
48 or 50.
They tried to tell you it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be these individual countries, only getting together for things like, common defense.
Yeah.
And some paperwork. That's why they call the federal government the administration.
Yes. You centralize that administrative stuff. Leave that.
Right.
Go ahead. You do that.
It was only supposed to be some paper pushers, and that's it. Right. But no, now it's become the largest empire in all of Earth's history.
Right.
Right.
Who we are all supposedly beholden to.
Yeah.
Which is asinine. I think this is interesting. Number one, because you've got a fair number of people actually embracing it. But I was looking at their website, and I think they're onto some good thought. They're thinking things through, and they're saying, and they've got a great fact section that's worth checking out. And I can't remember their exact website. I'm going to keep reading in this thing.
Go for it.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. When we talk about changing state borders or counties moving from one state to another, that's happened. It's not a new thing. So I know Virginia and West Virginia used to just be Virginia, and then they kind of separated.
Yeah.
But that was, the federal government was okay with that. And there was some back and forth, and these back and forths. Parts of New Hampshire used to be parts of Massachusetts before the Union. But even since the United States has been in existence, these things have occurred, that people have shifted from one state to another.
Yeah, I don't remember what happened with the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but it doesn't make sense from a purely topographical standpoint for the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to be Michigan, because it's literally a peninsula attached to the north end of Wisconsin.
Right.
Right. But somehow that is also part of Michigan, the lower peninsula of Michigan.
The UP, baby.
Right. Yeah. So, these things aren't unheard of.
This continues. Greater Idaho would move Idaho's borders 200 miles west across Oregon, but take just 10% of the state's population. Greater Idaho would see more than half of Oregon's territory leave the Beaver State and join Republican-led Idaho to the east. The move would shift Idaho's up. I'm rereading things again. Yep, they're just saying it again. The move would shift Idaho's border 200 miles west past the heart of Oregon. Greater Idaho began in earnest in 2020 and quickly began gaining traction, with 11 of the state's 36 counties voting to endorse the idea in 2022. Driving the force is a sharp political divide between the more sparsely populated rural and conservative interior of Oregon and the liberal coastal cities with population hubs such as Portland and the state capital, Salem. So, Elsbeth, you've been to Oregon?
I've only been to the Klamath Falls area, so dipped my toes in a little bit.
Did you see any meth?
So
I saw
crank.
Some, yeah.
The bathtub crank.
You see the movie
I saw
Spawn?
some people who for sure are the embodiment of that.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's what that town is about, right? I make fun of it because I knew some people who were, I don't know, sort of rebellious types.
Yeah.
And they knew, they're like, if you want the best bathtub crank you've ever had, you got to go to Klamath Falls, right? I'm not saying that that's what Klamath Falls is all about.
The water.
Right? But, I was just told by some knowledgeable people that that's where you got to go.
We'll just leave it at that. Yeah. But you have ties to the Klamath Falls area, right?
Yeah, that's where my boyfriend is born and raised.
I wasn't going to say that on the air. I wasn't going to.
I've already said it a few times.
I'm trying to tease these facts out of you. But yeah, where he lives and where he grew up would be included in this. And I don't know. It would be interesting to see. I know you plan to travel out there sometime this year to see what, people say on the ground in that particular area. That's an area that I am not well versed in, like the Klamath Falls area and the southern or the southwestern corner of the state, or the southeastern corner. The southeastern corner of Idaho has nothing. I'm just gonna. No offense if you're.
It's basically
Paisley.
Montana at that point.
No, it's basically desert. It's dry.
Yeah.
There's just. There are towns that have populations like Rome, Oregon. I used to look at on the map, population 5, which you think that's like a house.
Yeah.
With one family living in it. Rome's population is 5. But there are places like that, and I don't know. You might be 70, 80, 90, 100 miles to the next closest person. It's crazy.
I will say this, having lived on the West Coast for over 22 years, it's beautiful.
It is.
And from the mountains west, right? From the mountains east, it's flatland. It's basically the Midwest.
Right.
Right. Again, right. But flat, plainsy, right? Not a lot of mountains, that kind of thing. But from the mountains west, absolutely gorgeous. If you hate winter, right, to the West Coast, that's where you want to go. If you also don't like the tropical environment, right? That's like perfect temperatures. It's one of the reasons that drew me there, because I went there before I was into the internet was really very popular and that kind of thing, so I wasn't able to look that stuff up. But I was like, oh, they rarely have snow and it rarely gets above 85? I'm moving.
Sounds good to me. We're going to go to the phones. Dave Ridley on the line. Dave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys, I actually have some additional secession-related news.
Oh, nice. Please.
So this is a minor update on NHExit. One of the candidates one of the state reps who voted in favor of the original New Hampshire secession referendum legislation was Max Abramson in 2022.
Right.
And he is now running for Congress.
Cool.
And I actually reached out to him. I said, so is it going to cause you a problem if I, publicize the fact that there's an NHExit person who's running for Congress and connect you with that? Are you trying to hide it now? But he didn't seem to care. He's like, yeah, whatever. Thanks for the publicity. So he's also, by the way, in interest of full disclosure, he has been one of my advertisers off and on.
Good for him.
Well, and why wouldn't he be?
Right.
You've done some pretty amazing work, Dave.
Oh, thanks. So I don't know. I'm not sure which district he's running in New Hampshire, but he'll be running as a Republican. I guess he's part of the Republican Liberty Caucus. And, obviously I think we all appreciate his support for NHExit. And he made actually a speech on the House floor, or at least tried to, and they shut him down when he I guess he tried to ask a question he was up there and someone else was up there at the same time, and he tried to ask a question. They wouldn't let him ask it.
Huh.
That's a shame.
That was when the original New Hampshire independence referendum was up for debate in 2022.
Yeah, this happens so frequently in politics that, it's one of the many reasons why I think politics is just a sham, right? Is because, just even look back at Ron Paul when they're like, all right, fine, we'll let him in the debate. They put him at the little kiddie table.
Right.
Off to the side, like it was Thanksgiving.
Hey, Dave, thanks a lot for the call, man. 603-283-6160. We'll be back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Oregon deciding to leave and go to Idaho. This is Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Senators in the US, for the second time, have voted down a bipartisan border bill, which would have made changes to immigration law. If passed, it'd provide the federal government with far-reaching powers to restrict unlawful entries and tighten asylum rules. But it was once again opposed by Republican Party legislators, largely because of former US President Donald Trump, who's urged them to kill the proposal. Benji Hire reports.
Faced with a crisis at the US-Mexico border where arrests for illegal crossings have hit record highs, President Joe Biden, in an election year no less, is pushing for greater congressional funding for border security. Yet a bill that would have gone some way to addressing that has failed on Capitol Hill, blocked by his political rivals who claim the measures don't go far enough and that the administration should be doing more already to tackle the issue. The White House is taking aim at those Republicans, suggesting, quote, they do not care about securing the border or fixing America's broken immigration system, instead putting partisan politics ahead of the country's national security. Benji Hire, Washington.
Haiti's health system is now on the verge of collapse. That's a warning from the UN's Children Fund. It says there's been an alarming decrease in the number of hospitals still functioning in the violence-racked Caribbean nation. Jody Jacobs has more from the UN headquarters in New York.
Only 6 out of the 10 hospitals are still operational in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, as gang-led violence continues. This, the UN's Children's Fund says, has left vulnerable children deprived of essential care. Warehouses, pharmacies and containers filled with essential supplies have been looted, according to the organization, while hundreds remain stranded, unable to enter Port-au-Prince. The situation is likely to worsen as the coming rainy season may cause a rise in waterborne diseases. UNICEF and other humanitarian partners are now trying to establish alternatives to import and dispatch much-needed medical resources. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
The US government is launching a lawsuit against entertainment giant Live Nation. It's arguing the company, which owns Ticketmaster, has an unlawful monopoly over live events. Mitch McCann reports.
Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged in 2010 to form a business that dominates the US entertainment industry, but the government is hoping a court will rule that it should be separated. The Department of Justice says Live Nation now controls 80% or more of major concert venues' primary ticketing in America and owns and operates more than 260 venues across the country. The US government says it has used unlawful, anti-competitive tactics to maintain its monopoly on the industry, insulating itself from competitors. In a statement, Live Nation says the lawsuit comes after significant political pressure and ignores the reality of what actually makes ticket prices rise, like scalping and production costs. Mitch McCann, New.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
We're talking secession. At least we're talking about some secession of a bunch of counties from Oregon to Idaho if this plan goes through. In studio, it's myself, Chris.
The Reverend Captain Kickass.
And Elsbeth.
And we're going to continue on with this. We think it's kind of interesting. The idea is that a bunch of eastern Oregon counties would secede from Oregon and join. Actually, they just kind of moved the Idaho border over into Oregon so that about 50% of the land mass, which holds, get this, 10% of the population, would become Idaho's problem. That's how they're selling it, sort of. It's like, we'll take care of them. People in eastern Oregon who traditionally vote Republican and very conservatively would not have, you have 50% of the land mass, 10% of the people who will never, ever get anything passed in a heavily Democratic legislature. They will never have representation based on their ideals in Washington, because all the politicians are pretty much elected and selected by the left half of the state. So I think this is a fairly good solution to that problem. Personally, I would rather see them just form their own state and just say to heck with the U.S., but this is what I consider secession light, or at least a baby step, at least reminding people that these borders that we have today have been in flux and have been moving county by county since the country began.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the term baby steps, right?
Yeah.
As an anarchist, I believe that government as an organization type is barbaric, antique, evil, and should be done away with completely. I think mankind would be far better off without that system of organization of people. That said, I will take baby steps in that direction however and whenever I can, and this to me seems like a step in the right direction.
I think so too. This story continues. Greater Idaho began in earnest in 2020 and quickly began gaining traction.
That's the only thing that bothers me about this movement, is like it reminds me of Great Britain. Like, oh, you guys couldn't just be Britain?
Greater
You had to call
Idaho.
yourself Great Britain? Like why the adjective, right? You know, why the descriptor?
Segue. Anybody ever heard of a play called Greater Tuna?
No.
Check that one out.
Okay.
Greater Tuna,
I'll
Texas.
put it on my to-do list.
Driving the force is a sharp political divide between the more sparsely populated rural and conservative interior of Oregon and the liberal coastal cities with population hubs like Portland and the state capital Salem. If Greater Idaho were achieved, Idaho would lose 2/3 of its land, but only 10% of its population. A disparity,
You mean
which
Oregon?
is, yes, Oregon would lose 2/3 of its land, but only 10% of its population. A disparity which has left the conservative interior of the state feeling like their laws are being passed by people with no connection to their lifestyle and beliefs.
Yeah, and this just speaks to individuality, right?
Right.
These are people who are recognizing, hey, I live in this area, this rural area, and I've got people in a heavily populated area hundreds of miles away from me telling me how to behave and what to do with my life and how much tax I got to pay, et cetera, and so on. This is ridiculous. And so this is a baby step towards more individuality, where ultimately, in my mind, the idea is to reduce everything to the individual basis.
Quote, the Oregon-Idaho line was established 163 years ago and is now outdated, unquote. The movement's website reads, quote, it makes no sense in its current location because it doesn't match the location of the cultural divide in Oregon, unquote. Greater Idaho seeks to include 17 counties in its movement, made up of 14 full counties and 3 partial counties. Even if the movement gets all the votes necessary, the process would be far from over. In order to secede, the state legislatures of both Oregon and Idaho would need to approve the measure, and then the U.S. Congress would also need to approve.
Got to ask permission from the masters.
Please, pretty please, can I be in Idaho?
They're going to make you buy a license and pay a fee.
Right.
I'm still stuck on the naming convention. Like, Like, couldn't they have called it like Fat Idaho or Idaho Plus?
Idaho Plus.
Or
exactly.
something other than Greater Idaho? It's just bothering me.
No,
like,
it's got to be the plus symbol, like Paramount Plus or Apple Plus. Yeah.
Idaho
Plus.
Idaho 2.0
Right.
or 2 Point Idaho or something like, I don't know. Greater Idaho just sounds pompous.
It does. State borders have been redrawn in the past, including the territory of Maine becoming a state independent of Massachusetts in 1820. But never before has such a large swath of land and citizens seceded to join another state. So yeah, that's the idea, and I just don't see a downside to this. I'm interested, and I haven't been back home in an awfully long time, but my county seceded. Morrow County, where I grew up, they've already seceded. They've announced their intentions that they want to do it. I think it might be something in the water because, like, my school district,
or something not in the water in that particular area.
Exactly. So my school district, where I was educated, and I own high school and elementary school and junior high, seceded from the school district. They literally said, they were like, they were just coming up with these grand plans like, there really aren't that many students in Ione and Lexington, so let's just all absorb them like the Borg into Heppner, which was the large town.
Yeah.
And the largest town, like. But yeah, and I know all the farmers and people where I grew up were just like, nah, I don't think we want to do that.
Yeah,
but they came up with a way to fund it and do stuff.
I can't even imagine kids who are in a school of, like, how big was your class size at the time, at least?
I graduated in the top 10 of my class. I will say that.
And were there 10 people?
There were 12.
There were 12. And then taking those kids and putting them in a class size of like 30 plus kids or something.
Yeah. And we knew all those kids too. I mean, it was only 17 miles away. We knew those, and they were from Heppner. We didn't like them. It doesn't matter. And a lot of kids from my school ended up going to high school, for example, in the bigger school because they had better sports programs and some offerings. Some did, but overall, it was just the thing was that the people in that part of Oregon decided, that's just not right for us. And it ended up being a big deal. It had to go before the state legislature, and all this stuff ended up making headlines that they really didn't anticipate. But the point is they had their own values, and they wanted to continue on the path that they were on. They weren't interested in some like big centralized plan that they didn't see the benefit in.
It brings up an interesting question. Like, shouldn't people who, own property in a certain geographic area, if they, all get together and say, hey, we have decided collectively that we're going to do this. We're going to make a new county or a new state, whatever it is.
Right.
Right. Why the big production? Why the pageantry? Why the bureaucracy? Why can't it just be like, okay, it's done? Why can't they just declare it?
Change the deeds and
just declare it.
Need to do,
right? Update some paperwork and like it's done, right? But no, they got to go through the whole rigmarole. This is called the monkey dance, is what I call it, right? When bureaucrats make you do things for the privilege. Right, they're going to make them go through this huge song and dance, not only at like the town level, but the county level, the state level, and then the federal level before it can actually become a thing. Whereas they've already got what did we say, 13 signed up?
Yeah.
13 of 17?
Yeah.
So why isn't it like, these 13 have already become?
Right.
Why is it that they need to get to 17 and then all this monkey dancing, if you will, needs to occur before it's an actual thing?
Yeah.
Well, you've already got these people who say they want to do it. Why isn't it done?
Right.
Did you say that they have gotten 13 counties to okay it since 2020?
Yes.
That's very exciting,
Yeah.
at least. I wouldn't imagine that it would take much longer to get the last 4.
And it'll be interesting to see. So now you're dealing with, I think the last 4, I was looking at the map, are all those counties that may get split in half and may include a large liberal side to them, and I think they're going to be a tougher sell, but, if you look at the website, they bring up some good points to why this is a win-win for Oregon and for Idaho and for the people of Western Oregon and for the people of Eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
And, it just would make things a lot smoother. I don't know if it's right for me. It's not anything that I've looked at and read and like, hell, I got to go back home. Nothing like that. But I do applaud people taking their lives into their own hands and not just saying, no, it's the way it's always been and that's how it has to be. The problem with any conversation around secession is that the people in control will immediately, at some point, now, they'll do it immediately, accuse you of being a Southern slave owner. You are the equivalent of a Southern slave owner for wanting to fight back
that's government.
Against this union.
Government is the equivalent of a Southern slave owner.
No, but they will equate you as that.
I understand.
Yeah. But that's a great point. The true slave owners are living on the plantation that's in Washington, D.C. And it's pathetic. And I cannot wait. And I wish the people of Eastern Oregon and of Idaho good luck and Godspeed with this plan. I hope it succeeds. To the people in Texas that are continuing to rile things up with D.C. and continuing to push their Texas movement, I hope it succeeds. And by God, if anything I can do to help further NHexit, that's a great thing.
I think it's telling, and I'm hopeful. I'm filled with hope that we keep hearing about these types of things. Right, Texit, NHexit, this whole Oregon to Idaho, sort of pseudo secession thing. It makes me feel like people are beginning to wake up to the evil that is the system. They're beginning to wake up to, hey, I'm being ruled by people that I have nothing in common with at all, that I've never met, that have never met me. How can they determine what's best for me?
Captain, you must have met them. I mean, when you were at the signing session for your social contract, they must have been in the room, right?
Well, I don't have a copy of said social contract, so, I'm saying it doesn't exist.
Right. And
unless you could show me a copy.
Exactly. I want proof. I believe that. And I don't want people to believe that this is just a libertarian thing or it's just a, crazy.
No, it's a humanitarian thing.
Exactly. So let's look at these, like Texit. The idea that Texas would leave, probably pretty conservative running that. This Idaho-Oregon thing, pretty conservative. CalExit, California talking about breaking up into 5 different pieces or California seceding.
5 different pieces.
Well, that's one of the plans I've seen where they would have 5 different regions. And, based on the drawing of the map, 2 or 3 of those would be heavily leftist, judging by their locations. And, and a couple of them would be conservative. But there's all sorts of discussion across all sorts of political backgrounds around the subject of realignment with people you have things in common with. And I applaud them. And
that's not to say that, I get along with many people of many different political associations.
Sure.
And
I do too.
And the reason for that is people are people, right? Regardless of your political affiliation or your leaning, right? People are people. Most people just want to make a living, have a family, hang out with some friends, have some good times, right? Live a good life. And that's really that's kind of it. So it's when the people who are trying to control the masses of people start interfering is where people start getting this political division, this sort of hatred that they want to sow into each other as humans, right? They want you to hate each other for your political leanings, right? And that's the opposite of what I think should happen. I think, if anything, people should go out of their way to be friendly and to be more human to people who don't see the same as them, because you're going to learn something from those people.
Right.
Right. So while it makes sense to homogenize within certain borders, right, don't let that be a catalyst for hate. Right. Don't let that be well, I'm from New Hampshire and we're this way, and so I hate everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, no. I've got plenty of friends from like California and even out west in Seattle that like they know what I'm about. They've heard me, preach on, if you will. They know that I do this radio show. They've listened. Right. And like some of them to some extent like are just like, oh, that's just crazy Captain doing his radio show. Others are like, no one has ever said the words to me that you have said on this radio show.
Yeah.
Or every now and again, somebody will be like, hey, I discovered so-and-so online, and they reminded me of things that you used to say all the time. And they'll send me a link to it, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, like I went through those guys like a decade ago, right? I listened to that podcast, 10 years ago or whatever, that kind of thing. But they're like, I've planted some seeds. And so I think largely it's just the public schooling system has indoctrinated people to feel a certain way, and it takes this really big push and time for people to come out of that fog of statism.
Do you think there's been a push, and I'm going to say over the last couple decades, I've really noticed it over the last couple decades, where the powers that be seem to be working, they're like in double time to get us so polarized.
The pitchfork people, and the torch people, right? You're attacking the wrong people.
Yeah, we should be attacking those people. I'm going to go to the phones where we have Mark on the line. Mark, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello, this is Mark. I'm in Pennsylvania. I have a question about who's the leader of the globalists? Who gives the marching orders to the dark state, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum? Who wants all this control, all this power?
That would be me. Nobody's ever called me out, least of all on the air. I hate to have this is
I was going to say Cobra Commander.
I was going to say Satan, but he went ahead and spoke up. So
she's calling me Satan now. Wow. Oh my God. Now go ahead, Mark.
It's
who do you think it is, Mark?
Us against each other. They're turning us against each other, and it seems like someone wants all this control. And I don't know if they're going to hand it over to the Antichrist in the future, but it's just looking too weird. It's too bad.
Well, you make a good point. They do want to control. It's really not even rocket science, right? It's basic human psychology, right? Make everybody afraid and then swoop in as the hero. Right. That's all these governments do, right? It's called the Hegelian dialectic.
And it's nothing new.
It's nothing new. It's the same. Like once you recognize it as a pattern, like your whole world opens up. You're like, oh my gosh, you mean government is coming in to solve a problem that they created? Wow. Again? Oh my gosh. Like the first time you see it, you're like, oh, that's one example, but they don't really do this all the time, do they? And then you just keep paying attention to the news and what happens in politics, and particularly around the election years, right? Like now you're going to see a whole bunch of this stuff where like government's going to come to the rescue for a problem that they themselves created, and then they're going to take credit for solving the problem that they themselves created in the first place. And then that's going to win them votes somehow.
Right. To your question, Mark, I mean, I've always, and I can only tell you what I believe personally. I believe that there are people with a lot of power and a lot of money that have been controlling the strings of media and controlling the strings of government, because you can buy, a TV network as easily, or I should say, you can buy a political wing as easily, or politicians as easily as it is to buy a TV studio or anything else. And I think those people are the ones that are really throwing their weight around. And it's some people. I don't want to say it's some other force. Maybe they're guided by some greater evil power, which I don't know about. But I believe this all goes back to people and humanity.
I think the answer is there are many people. There's not one leader of the evilness that is, being created. But
I was just kidding when I said it was me.
I know.
It's not just me.
But there's only 200 governments on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Right around 200. I don't know if it's 202 or 190 or whatever it is, but 200, right around that. There's only 200 governments on planet Earth, right? So roughly 200 people make up this consortium, if you will, of the leaders of these things, right? Why does everybody on planet Earth, I don't even know the population of planet Earth, billions.
7-8 billion.
Yeah. Why do the rest of the people of planet Earth bow down to their desires and their wishes? That's the question that people need to answer.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Mark?
No, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for the call, man. I don't get that, and it's always
weird.
like that. Larkin Rose years ago did a great video called "The Tiny Dot."
Love that video.
One?
Yeah,
yeah. It's just this point that you have this big swarm of dots being controlled by these 100 dots who answer to one dot.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and that's what we do. We have somehow basically pledged our allegiance not to a flag, but to people, fallible people, and I don't know what we can help. I mean, part of the reason I do this show is to hope that we will reach someone who might get that and might start to question, hold on, why am I following along with this? I don't agree with it. Why am I just taking their word for it? Why should we do that?
Yeah.
You shouldn't. That's my answer. You shouldn't.
Me too. With this show, when I started listening to it was because it was the early days of the YouTube before Google bought them, right? When YouTube was actually cool and would serve you up relevant stuff. Somebody sent me a link to something, and that led me to some other things, which led me to, I think it was Aaron Russo's, he did a film, I'm trying to remember the name of it now, Freedom to Fascism, right? And Aaron Russo was a Hollywood producer. He made films. But he made this, we'll call it a political film, that just sort of exposed what governments do and how they do it. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. And so then it started serving me up stuff that was adjacent to that film, led me to Free Talk Live.
Right.
And I just turned it on every night when I got home from work, because on the West Coast, this thing starts at 5. So if I'm getting out of work at 5, I'm getting on like 5:30, 6 o'clock at the latest.
Drive time, baby.
That's
and
great. I would just have this on. People would come over to my house, we'd have a couple of beers and we'd be talking. They'd be like, what the hell are you listening to? I'm like, oh, this is Free Talk Live, right? And so these ideas were never taught to me in school. The perspective of liberty for the answer to every issue ever was that was a foreign concept to me. I've never heard that. I'm like, that can't be possible. You can't have the same answer for every possible issue. But no, actually you can. Yeah. And it turns out that it's the best answer, right? If you value your own personal autonomy and freedom to do whatever it is you want to do, unless you're hurting somebody, right? Like outside of that, that's really the only rule. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody else.
I think that is the core of what we want to get across to people. It's not so much, we want you to live your life the way you see fit.
Yes.
But don't do it at the expense of someone else's liberty. And that means also don't support politicians that are going to change somebody else's personal liberty. I mean, that is the bigger step that people have to take, that you really have to question politics. Just the whole idea that a group of people can decide what is right, that they can make moral choices that everyone has to follow. It's asinine to put that power in anybody's hands. This is Free Talk Live.
Nobody loves their cable company except for internet access. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. To find what you want to watch, rather than the several hundred channels your cable or satellite menu force feeds you, explore cordcuttersnews.com. It's a buyer's guide for spending less or spending nothing on television. Founder Luke Bouma told me that for the vast majority of Americans, everything they want to watch is available streaming. The only reason many still subscribe to cable or satellite is live sports, and many team channels now offer streaming. Some cord cutters do end up paying cable-size money, but what what they end up with is 100% their menu. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Senators in the US, for the second time, have voted down a bipartisan border bill, which would have made changes to immigration law. If passed, it'd provide the federal government with far-reaching powers to restrict unlawful entries and tighten asylum rules. But it was once again opposed by Republican Party legislators, largely because of former US President Donald Trump, who's urged them to kill the proposal. Benji Hire reports.
Faced with a crisis at the US-Mexico border where arrests for illegal crossings have hit record highs, President Joe Biden, in an election year no less, is pushing for greater congressional funding for border security. Yet a bill that would have gone some way to addressing that has failed on Capitol Hill, blocked by his political rivals who claim the measures don't go far enough and that the administration should be doing more already to tackle the issue. The White House is taking aim at those Republicans, suggesting, quote, they do not care about securing the border or fixing America's broken immigration system, instead putting partisan politics ahead of the country's national security. Benji Hire, Washington.
Haiti's health system is now on the verge of collapse. That's a warning from the UN's Children Fund. It says there's been an alarming decrease in the number of hospitals still functioning in the violence-racked Caribbean nation. Jody Jacobs has more from the UN headquarters in New York.
Only 6 out of the 10 hospitals are still operational in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, as gang-led violence continues. This, the UN's Children's Fund says, has left vulnerable children deprived of essential care. Warehouses, pharmacies and containers filled with essential supplies have been looted, according to the organization, while hundreds remain stranded, unable to enter Port-au-Prince. The situation is likely to worsen as the coming rainy season may cause a rise in waterborne diseases. UNICEF and other humanitarian partners are now trying to establish alternatives to import and dispatch much-needed medical resources. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
The US government is launching a lawsuit against entertainment giant Live Nation. It's arguing the company, which owns Ticketmaster, has an unlawful monopoly over live events. Mitch McCann reports.
Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged in 2010 to form a business that dominates the US entertainment industry, but the government is hoping a court will rule that it should be separated. The Department of Justice says Live Nation now controls 80% or more of major concert venues' primary ticketing in America and owns and operates more than 260 venues across the country. The US government says it has used unlawful, anti-competitive tactics to maintain its monopoly on the industry, insulating itself from competitors. In a statement, Live Nation says the lawsuit comes after significant political pressure and ignores the reality of what actually makes ticket prices rise, like scalping and production costs. Mitch McCann, New York.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, what happens next in Iran following the weekend death of President Ibrahim Raisi? The country will hold a fresh presidential election on June the 28th. Handicapping the race, Karim Sadjipour of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
I always thought of Raisi as Khamenei's mini-me, someone he had cultivated for a couple of decades, and I think this is a big blow to him. So one option is for him to introduce his son to Iranians by having him run in the presidential election. I think that's unlikely, but perhaps in the realm of possibilities. Another is you go with a steady hand and someone who has a background in the security forces and the Revolutionary Guards. And perhaps an obvious candidate for that would be Ghalibaf, who's the current Speaker of Parliament. Another option is you try to find another mini-me. It's, increasingly slim pickings of finding a Venn diagram of someone who is both a hardline ideologue and has some managerial competence. My view is that Raisi's death really accelerates one of two likely outcomes, which is Iran's transition to more of a military dictatorship, or frankly, the regime's implosion.
Other analysts argue there is less current risk to Iran's clerical regime, but the election itself is an unexpected and complex challenge, given very low voter turnout in parliamentary elections 2 months ago. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. Healthcare system on the verge of collapse, warns the UN's Children's Fund about Haiti, where there are fewer and fewer hospitals functioning. The US Senate blocks a bipartisan border bill claiming it would have changed immigration law, and events platform Live Nation and Ticketmaster have an unlawful monopoly, says the Department of Justice, who's suing them for antitrust violations. And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reports.
The number of users who actually enjoy Facebook is down to 4. And Apple announces a new iPhone with the N-word on the back, knowing customers will buy it anyway. And now for the delayed and utterly thoughtless romantic gesture that is the Onion Week in Review. Self-identified 9/11 truther Dennis Shaw told reporters Tuesday he's absolutely convinced the United States government has orchestrated an intricate plot to systematically destroy the last 11 years of his life. Shaw, who since 2001 has spent nearly every waking minute poring over footage of the World Trade Center attack and even handing out truther pamphlets every afternoon, says the government is behind the gradual collapse of his personal and professional life, adding that the conspiracy, quote, goes all the way to the top.
Before 2001, I'd see my friend Stephen Copley every couple of weeks, and now he won't even answer my calls. The government got to him too. Think about it. My coworkers, my wife, my friends, everyone calling me crazy after September 11th and wanting nothing to do with me. What are the chances of that?
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
Hey, this is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160. That's our call-in number. Thank you for joining us for hour number 3 of our show tonight. It's me, Chris.
Me, Captain.
And Elsbeth.
Supposed to say me, Elsbeth.
And me,
Well,
Elsbeth.
we had a thing going, and you just had to break it up.
That's right. I was thinking, I know you're going to read a thing, but I was thinking that Skeeter gave you a compliment that we just sort of brushed over.
No, I heard it.
Okay. All right.
I wasn't going to self-acknowledge.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge.
Stating that I am the greatest talk show host in the history of mankind.
I don't know that that's what he said. I
I'm
think he
pretty
said.
sure those
I think he
were
said.
his exact
Finally,
words.
Free Talk Live gets a competent first chairperson.
Don't let that kid. Don't let him kid you. I am not competent. Not in the least. It's been too many years since I've sat in this first chair. I would much rather have someone like maybe Captain have volunteered to take chair tonight, but that's okay.
Well, it's Thursday, man. I don't want to take your day away from you.
Get you. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Forkfest, happening June 13th through the 16th at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Forkfest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Forkfest is decentralized, so there is no ticket cost and no one is in charge. For more information and to connect with other attendees, you can visit the unofficial website, forkfest.party. That's forkfest.party. So we began this evening by we talked a bit about AI, and we made fun of AI, and we talked about AI hallucinating all over the place. I've had a night like that.
Just one?
Maybe.
Come on, you're from Oregon, man. Like,
I cannot tell.
figure you had at least like a whole week or something.
I did not exhale. And then we talked about parts of Oregon moving to become parts of Idaho, the Greater Idaho Movement, which
making Oregonians into Idahoans.
Idahoans.
Is that what you say? A person from Idaho is an Idahoan?
I think so.
Or Idahoer?
I think it's on paper. It looks like Idahoan,
Idahonian,
but there may be like some local colloquialism that we're just butchering. So I'm not even going to try. They're trying to become part of Idaho.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an interesting idea, and it's a group of people who believe that they are more aligned with another group of people, and they want to stay aligned with those guys, and the ones that are existing.
You guys know I like to take one word and another word and put them together to create a new word. This is called a portmanteau.
Oh, yes.
Right? So technicalties is one of my favorite ones. It's technical difficulties. Now it's just one word, technicalties. Right? I have one for Idaho and Oregon. Hang on. It's Idagon.
Idagon?
Idagon. Right? They all get together. They form just a whole new state now called Idagon. Like if I were around there, Idagon.
Idagon too. It's good. I like it. I don't know what I think the idea is they'll just be Idaho. I suspect that's what they're going for, but yeah, Greater Idaho. I can't think of anything but the play Greater Tuna, which I highly recommend.
Why not Greatest Idaho? Right? Why not just take it one step further? Saying that they're better than everybody else, right? The Greatest Idaho.
Yeah, I do like that, and we're going to change gears again. We're going to talk economics. Well, not really economics. We're just going to talk about what's the word I'm looking for? Blank show the U.S. economy is, and Reason summarized it all in an article today by Liz Wolfe. Why is the economy so weird right now? What pundits say, quote, Joe Biden is at the moment losing his re-election campaign, unquote, wrote the Atlantic's Anna Lowry in a piece this week, quote, and he is doing so while presiding over the strongest economy the United States has ever experienced, unquote. Why are you laughing? Why are you smirking, Elizabeth?
The strongest economy the United States ever had was in I don't even know, like the first 50 to 100 years of its existence.
Lowry cites the lowest jobs rate, under 4%, and higher wage growth than we experienced during Barack Obama's administration. Quote, inflation has cooled off considerably, unquote, she added. Quote, meaning the consumer's purchasing power is strong, unquote. This argument isn't unique. Pundits have, of late, been scratching their heads trying to figure out why President Joe Biden is polling so poorly when the recession never really materialized and inflation was tamed, even if that means interest rates remain high for a while longer. Some of this may be due to the fact that the economic indicators are actually all over the place and do not paint a consistently rosy picture despite the credit many are attempting to give to Biden.
Okay, so Reason is committing what I like to call the ultimate sin when it comes to speaking to regular people, right? These publications oftentimes make things sound far more complicated than they actually are by using large multisyllabic words, industry terms, right? That only economists or people who follow the economy will follow. So I like to reduce things to the ridiculous that the common person will understand. And I've downloaded a thing that I found on the internet, of course, because it must be true. It's on the internet,
right?
But they actually source their facts here. The source is from the McDonald's app itself. This is the McDonald's inflation statement, if you will.
Perfect.
So let's see. Let's find out what was the biggest increase for McDonald's since 2019. It looks like the McChicken.
McChicken?
The McChicken sandwich.
Okay.
It was
what kind of an inflation rate do we see by that?
It was $1.29 at the end of 2019.
Seems
and
like a fair price.
The mid-2024 price, $3.89.
It's a little more than double.
A percentage increase of 201.6%.
I knew it was something ungodly because the McChicken used to be my favorite thing in McDonald's, and then I stopped buying it just out of principle.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm not willing to pay that for fake chicken.
Let's see, the second highest increase for McDonald's, medium French fries, $1.79 at the end of 2019.
Potatoes got to be cheap.
They're from Idaho,
It's
right?
probably up to $1.81 by now.
$4.79.
$4.
$4. Used to be $1.79 in 2019. Mid 2024, $4.19, an increase of 134.1%. We can look at similar data for like Taco Bell, for example. Let's see, what's the biggest Taco Bell increase? The beefy 5-layer burrito.
That was my guess. It was going to be number one.
Yeah. End of 2019 price, $1.69. Mid 2024 price, $3.69. A 118% increase.
Yeah, so you're looking at like doubling. Now I suppose, though, when Biden finishes taming inflation, this should be any day now, all these prices will go back down to where they were, right?
No,
prices don't go back down. Prices are.
You and I are old enough to
inflation
know.
is regressive, and it's not ever going to go away. This is, I hate this phrase, the new normal, and it's only going to continue to go up. Now, why is this? Is it because Biden is in office? No, it's not because Biden is in office. It's because Trump and Biden were in office, and they each sat over the biggest increase in government spending we've ever had, even including wartime.
Yeah.
And when they increase government spending, that means the government does what, kids? Prints more money.
Money printer go.
The idea that you can triple the supply of U.S. dollars and they'll still be worth the same is asinine, and what it leads to is a loss of purchasing power, which we perceive as inflation. That's what you see. It's not that a potato is more expensive to grow.
Right. The overwhelming majority of dollars in the United States monetary system, that's both cash and digital, right? So like you borrow money from the bank, you never actually take all that money out of the bank and hand it over to, like, you know, whoever you're buying your house from, right? It's all just a digital process. But the largest amount of money, or the largest portion of money that exists today, was printed since 2019.
Yeah. That's more than the previous 200 plus years.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible thought.
And so what happens when that much money is injected into the system is there are far more dollars than there were before chasing the same amount, or right around the same amount, of goods and services. Yeah. And so because there's so many more dollars than there were before, that means it's going to take more dollars for you to purchase the same amount of goods and services you did before. So if you're feeling a little pinch in the wallet, if you're feeling it at the grocery store, you're feeling it at the restaurants that you like to frequent, if you've had to cut back on these things, they want you, the government, of course, the Federal Reserve, they want you to blame corporations for raising their prices.
Blame capitalism.
Yeah, they want you to blame that. No, you blame the Federal Reserve. You blame the presidents that we've had since we've all been alive. I think every president that I have been alive under has successfully beaten the president before them in injecting more money into the economy than the previous guy did.
Right.
It's just that the last two guys did it on a much larger scale than has ever been done before, because they're like, well, what did our predecessors do? Oh, they did this? Well, let's just soup that up.
Well, I love the fact that what came out right around the beginning of Corona, of the pandemic, was the concept, and it really started to gain ground in some circles, was modern monetary theory.
Oh, God. Yeah.
The idea that you can print, if you are the world reserve currency, you can print money all you want. You can boost your government spending, buy whatever you want, do whatever you want. And I swear to God, people in the Trump administration began to listen. They're like, this is the perfect excuse. look, it's modern monetary. It's modern monetary theory.
Yeah.
It's got the word modern in it, and now we're faced with this pandemic. So this will be.
But it's got the word theory in it too, Chris. So like, if it fails, they'd be like, "Well, it was just a theory."
Well, there's also
we didn't know what would happen.
Of gravity too. So let's put the same belief in that as we do gravity. It's insane that they did this, and there are a lot of people out there that blame this specifically on Biden, and you can't.
No.
You have to look at Trump too, because Trump jacked up spending to ungodly numbers and made it pretty much okay for Biden to do the exact same thing.
Right.
Biden may have included a few more pet projects, but he didn't really he didn't go off script
and
of what Trump had already done.
Where did Trump learn it from?
Right.
Obama.
Obama.
Where did Obama learn it from?
A whole lot of years of spending after 9/11.
And at some point you start to go, well, all right, if these guys are all doing the same thing, even though the words that come out of their mouths is different, but they're all doing the same thing, aren't they really just puppets for something else?
And hold on, wasn't a, let's see, Republican, Democrat. It's just like, quit trying to blame the other guy.
Right.
Your side's just as guilty. We're continuing this article, making sense of it all. Sure, unemployment is low, and inflation has been decently tamed to 3.5% in per March data, but it doesn't feel great to most voters because A, it was via the Federal Reserve hiking interest rates that made it so inflation could be tamed, and B, 3.5 still seems pretty high to people because the average annual rate of inflation was quite low for pretty much the 90s and the aughts, the 2000s, with the exception of 2008 and now. In other words, it's still more expensive to buy basic goods than people are accustomed to, and it's much more expensive to borrow money than before. This affects people's behavior. Home sales alone slowed a lot in 2023, for example, and it certainly affects their sentiment. Yeah, no kidding. People should be feeling, it drives me nuts when I see these headlines. Consumers are more optimistic. I'm like, what are you basing your optimism on?
Who are these consumers that are optimists?
Who are these consumers you speak of? I mean, I don't know anybody who feels that these things are good or looking up, or other than it's election year and they may feel that I think if Team Red gets back in, boy, that'll turn this whole thing around, even though Team Red is half the reason we're in this whole problem in the first place.
Yeah, have people forgotten about like Trump bucks during, the pandemic when everybody just got free money?
Yeah. Yes. Half the country approximately has completely forgotten about them.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. They sent me some money.
Or they don't.
And it didn't do anything. I spent it instantly.
Exactly. But the Biden bucks, I did get them and I did spend them, but I didn't like that.
Well, there's something, and I don't know, there's a website somewhere, I don't know what it is, but it tells you, like, if you'd have just taken that, the stimulus checks and put it into Bitcoin, what it would be worth now. And it's something like, what was it, $1,800, I think? It was 12 and then 6 or something, so like 1,200 or 600 and then 12, and so $1,800 then would roughly be worth $6,000 now. Right? So if you'd have just done nothing with it other than dump it into cryptocurrency, you'd be coming out on top at this point.
But I got a PlayStation and a 4K TV, dude. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. Like, all my musician friends are like, dude, I just bought a new pedal. I got a guitar, man, right? I had some money already, and I needed just a little bit more to get that guitar, so I went ahead and got it, which is probably a much better use of it than many other things that you could possibly put it into, because at least it's a tangible good that might retain its value. Musical instruments, as long as they're quality ones, generally retain their value, in the way that like certain cars would, like a Toyota or something like that. Guns, yes.
Yeah, things like that. Also, quite shockingly, voters don't seem to like being lied to. Biden said inflation was 9% when I came in, and today, this is him talking, Inflation was at, quote, 9% when I came in, and it's now down around 3%, unquote. In an interview with Yahoo Finance earlier this week, a claim he keeps making. Actually, inflation was 1.4% when Biden came in, a fact that any halfwit can easily find by Googling, and it's the massive increase in government spending under the guise of COVID-19 during both the Biden and Donald Trump presidencies that led to the predictable results of high inflation.
Yeah, here's the other thing. If you as a government and as these two presidents decide that in cooperation with your governors of certain states, you decide that you're going to shut down a whole bunch of businesses, which results in a whole bunch of businesses going under, which results in a whole bunch of people losing their jobs because of this so-called pandemic. You don't get to take credit for the recovery
right.
after you lift the lockdowns. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. Joe Biden, you cannot claim, look at all these jobs I've created, when it's really just the jobs returning that you eliminated.
Yeah, it's insane. And
that sounds like a fact, actually, that Biden got from AI and forgot to actually fact check.
Nice. This was, I think Biden has AI hallucinations.
Oh, I think Biden just has hallucinations.
Yeah.
He's obviously senile and he's obviously a pervert. So, he's got a son or a crackhead for a son, right? You figure it out.
So it's not just that inflation remains high-ish or that interest rates are high, but it's also that the guy in charge keeps trying to act like nobody's could have possibly predicted or prevented this. That's not true.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you listened to Free Talk Live during that period of time? Go back and listen to all the episodes we put out, like as the pandemic was kicking in, and listen to the callers, listen to some of the economists who've spoken to us, and check their sources, check their creds now, because right, they were all canceled for predicting exactly what happened.
To make matters worse, economic indicators are just as broadly all over the place, and it's hard to make sense of. Home and car insurance premiums have surged, car repair prices remain higher than they've generally been, wages have risen and stayed high in some industries, but when, say, we're talking about high wages of mechanics, those costs get passed on to consumers in some form, higher prices generally. It's all quite funky right now, and will be interesting to see whether Biden gets dinged for this at the ballot box, though Trump, too, shares plenty of blame. And I have this discussion every time somebody brings up, prices and they say, well, just Joe Biden this and Joe Biden that. I'm like, dude, did you live in this country under Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was just as bad. And to their point, I mean, you can say that Biden, I think, spent more on stuff that most people would agree is frivolous.
Mm.
If I were to look at just the names of programs and stuff, like I think, but he wanted to be as good as Trump. I've got to show that I can spend money just as well as that orange man can. Hey, we've got to do this, and he's trying to pander. Definitely to his base and what he perceives his base to be.
Yeah.
So on that note, I kind of think that the Democrats are really all over the place, just like the Republicans are all over the place. I'm not sure what the core of the Democratic Party is, and it's hard to tell what the core of the Republican Party is right now.
Yeah, and hopefully a lot more people are just like, you know what, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And I say that not as like somebody who's like trying to create nihilists who are just like, screw it, I don't care anymore. But hopefully they're coming to the realization that the system is the problem. It doesn't matter what party you're a part of. It doesn't matter who you're going to put in the office. It's the chair that's the problem.
Right.
Right. And if you wake up to that fact, all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, then why am I even participating in this system at all?
I love when it was after one of the primary elections this year. I was asking college students, because I own a business that's very close to a college.
Mm.
It's like, so did you go out and vote? And he's like, nah. I'm like, why is that? He's like, a couple years ago, They were telling us that we all had to go vote. It was really important. And now we have, and I'm using the students' words, we have this zombie running things, and it's not getting any better. 603-283-6160 is our call-in. This is Free Talk Live.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. Senators in the US, for the second time, have voted down a bipartisan border bill, which would have made changes to immigration law. If passed, it'd provide the federal government with far-reaching powers to restrict unlawful entries and tighten asylum rules. But it was once again opposed by Republican Party legislators, largely because of former US President Donald Trump, who's urged them to kill the proposal. Benji Hire reports.
Faced with a crisis at the US-Mexico border where arrests for illegal crossings have hit record highs, President Joe Biden, in an election year no less, is pushing for greater congressional funding for border security. Yet a bill that would have gone some way to addressing that has failed on Capitol Hill, blocked by his political rivals, who claim the measures don't go far enough and that the administration should be doing more already to tackle the issue. The White House is taking aim at those Republicans, suggesting, quote, they do not care about securing the border or fixing America's broken immigration system, instead putting partisan politics ahead of the country's national security. Benji Hire, Washington.
Haiti's health system is now on the verge of collapse. That's a warning from the UN's Children Fund. It says there's been an alarming decrease in the number of hospitals still functioning in the violence-racked Caribbean nation. Jody Jacobs has more from the UN headquarters in New York.
Only 6 out of the 10 hospitals are still operational in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, as gang-led violence continues. This, the UN's Children's Fund says, has left vulnerable children deprived of essential care. Warehouses, pharmacies and containers filled with essential supplies have been looted, according to the organization, while hundreds remain stranded, unable to enter Port-au-Prince. The situation is likely to worsen as the coming rainy season may cause a rise in waterborne diseases. UNICEF and other humanitarian partners are now trying to establish alternatives to import and dispatch much-needed medical resources. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations in New York.
The US government is launching a lawsuit against entertainment giant Live Nation. It's arguing the company, which owns Ticketmaster, has an unlawful monopoly over live events. Mitch McCann reports.
Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged in 2010 to form a business that dominates the US entertainment industry, but the government is hoping a court will rule that it should be separated. The Department of Justice says Live Nation now controls 80% or more of major concert venues' primary ticketing in America and owns and operates more than 260 venues across the country. The US government says it has used unlawful, anti-competitive tactics to maintain its monopoly on the industry, insulating itself from competitors. In a statement, Live Nation says the lawsuit comes after significant political pressure and ignores the reality of what actually makes ticket prices rise, like scalping and production costs. Mitch McCann, New York.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 to get on the air to talk about what you'd like to talk about. We have talked about AI. We've talked about Oregon counties seceding to Idaho.
If at first you don't secede, try and try again.
I love that. And we just got done talking about why is Joe Biden tanking when we have what people perceive as still a good economy, which left all three of us kind of scratching our heads. But every night we do try to thank our AMP member of the day, and AMP stands for, help me out, Captain.
Well, it's plural now. We added an S to it since the last
AMPS,
time. Yeah,
please.
AMPS. Advertise, market, promote, and support.
Free Talk Live. So if you want to donate, if you can donate at least $5, it helps us continue to spread the ideas of liberty and freedom on the radio, reaching somewhere around 120 stations right now-ish. But we're working to get more, and we're working to spread that to more and more people, so maybe they will be inspired to take control over their own destiny. But I would like to give a little shout out to Timothy Connard, who is a platinum level.
Ooh.
Platinum?
Yeah, so there's silver.
What is that?
Silver is $5, gold is $10, platinum is $25 a month.
Wow. And evidently there's a diamond too, which
Yeah. There's one level where like you just basically can do whatever you want on Free Talk Live.
That's great. I just call whenever I want. I have what just play music. I want to listen to music.
I think it's like you can like co-produce an hour of Free Talk Live. I don't remember what it is, but you can find out at
amps.freetalklive.com. Yeah, so I'm looking at this list, and I've added my name because I've been an amplifier of the show long before I was ever hosting the show, which is going on over a decade now. But on this list of amplifiers, I'm not on it. So I want to give a special shout out to me.
Well, who was the other guy first?
Timothy Connard.
I try to say the name twice whenever I do these things. So
yeah, Timothy Connard, if you're listening, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Everybody here appreciates it.
I don't know. There might be some sort of a unwritten rule about like if you're a host or a former host, like you don't get on the list somehow.
No, I've seen other hosts on there. I think it's just hosts? Me. I don't care. I'm just angry. I'm just bitter.
All right. That's fine. You're old. It happens.
I'm old, bitter, cranky.
Get off my lawn.
Exactly.
I actually did that to some kids recently.
Did it feel good?
I felt like Clint Eastwood. I did. They were standing on the corner of my lawn and the street, and they were waiting for like a semi to go by so they could do the arm up and pull down and get them to honk their horn.
Right.
And I'm like on the phone I'm taking care of business, right? And those semi horns are kind of loud, and I had a window open, and so they'd go by and they're honk, honk. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I look outside. There's these kids. Yeah, 3 of them. They're, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 years old, somewhere in that range. And so finally, I got to go out and look all mean on my front porch and go, hey! And they all turn around like, and I'm like, get off my lawn! And they scramble, right?
Shaking your fist at them.
I know. I just had to. I mean, I look like me, so people find me intimidating because of the giant beard and that kind of thing.
The fact that you're 7 foot 4.
No,
I want people to get a good visual of the captain.
Great. Now I'm going to have to apologize to people. Like, sorry, I'm not taller when I meet them in person.
I'm really not 7'4". I know this.
I'm like 5'8", maybe.
Yeah, 5'8" and change. Don't shortchange yourself there. Yeah, call it.
Depends on whether I'm wearing stilettos. Big burly man, giant beard, stilettos. That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, I break conventions, man.
No, that's no problem. We're going to stick on AI for just one more segment because this stuff is curious. This comes to us again from Reason. Not even artificial intelligence can make central planning work, which I think that may be the most intelligent thing I've read yet about AI. This is again from Reason. The term wicked problem has become a standard way for policy analysts to describe a social issue where whose solution is inherently elusive. Wicked problems have many causal factors, complex interdependencies, and no ability to test all the possible combinations of plausible interventions. Often, the problem itself cannot be articulated in a straightforward, agreed-upon way. Classic examples of wicked problems include climate change, substance abuse, international relations, healthcare systems, education systems, and economic performance. No matter how far computer science advances, some social problems will remain wicked.
I think you got to kind of read that in the Northeast accent. It's a wicked problem.
And believe me, if you've never been to the North, if you've never been to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, probably Maine too,
you're doing yourself a wicked disservice.
You would not believe how often the word wicked is interjected into every situation.
Growing up in the Midwest, that came around and went, right? It was like one of these, today we call it viral, but it was
a little fad for a
while, yeah,
right?
thank you. Kind of like breakdancing.
Right.
That was a fad for a while.
Wicked.
Right? Tying a checkered bandana around your denim pants. That was a 80s fad, right? You know, so was the term wicked. And then, like, it was replaced by, I don't know, something else.
Right.
Awesome or something.
Yeah, something like that. And so, but then you come to the Northeast, and I'm like, I forgot about wicked.
And they're using it to describe bad situations.
It's a wicked storm we had.
Wonderful situations. Yeah, it's just used in a million ways.
It was a wicked wedding reception, man.
But now we're using it to talk about wicked problems in AI. The latest developments in artificial intelligence represent an enormous advance in computer science. Could that technology advance give bureaucrats the tools that they have been missing to allow them to plan a more efficient economy? No. Many advocates of central planning seem to think so. Their line of thinking appears to be, 1, chatbots have absorbed enormous amounts of data. True. 2, large amounts of data produce knowledge. Questionable. And 3, knowledge will enable computers to plan the economy. Absolutely not. These assumptions are wrong. Chatbots have been trained to speak using large volumes of text, but they have not absorbed the knowledge contained in the text. Even if they had, there is knowledge that is critical for economic operations that is not available to a central planner or a computer.
So first and foremost, Austrian Economics 101, and I don't even know if they even go into this very deeply, but the economy is human. Right.
Read Ludwig von Mises's Human Action.
Yes.
For more on this subject. Yeah.
Yes. And so it is going to literally be impossible for even AI to predict markets effectively. Now, you can get lucky. You can make some assumptions, just like you can now, right? If you watch and read enough in a niche market, right? You can be like, oh, that stock is down today, and they announced that they're going to do this thing. I think the stock is going to go up. It's gambling. It's still gambling, right?
Right.
So the economy, at its essence, is just human beings trading value with each other. That's the basis of economy. That changes on a moment-to-moment basis, microseconds, right? Something might be worth $500 to me today, but if something goes wrong in my life and like that thing would have, or will solve some problems that I have, now it might be worth $1,000.
So you and I were talking about origin stories, personal origin stories, like how do we end up in this studio doing this?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? And, we both ended up at Ron Paul at various points in our lives, and we both took away different things, but we both, I think, had you ever heard of Austrian economics?
Not until Ron Paul.
I hadn't either, and I was familiar with Keynesian when I heard of Ron Paul, I was familiar with Keynesianism, and I was more versed with the Chicago school, the monetary theory, the guys like Friedman and stuff like that, and popularized by Thomas Sowell. That's what I had read. But Austrian economics I hadn't learned about at all, and I started to get into it, and I'm like just trying to understand, okay, so what models are they no, the idea of economics is of Austrian economics is you can't predict what human actions are going to do, and you've got to look at the economy and realize that this is made up of 330, just in the U.S., 333 million people making God knows how many choices about what they like, what kind of cereal they like, what kind of soda pop they like, every single day.
Yeah.
Every single moment. I change between wanting a Diet Pepsi and wanting a seltzer just while I'm in the grocery store.
Right.
And these all have economic impacts on various parts of the economy. So the idea of AI or a central planner or a computer program or a model trying to predict anything in the economy is a fool's errand.
Yeah, learning about Austrian economics, I had avoided economics as a subject because I think I'm like most people in the United States. The way, even newspapers read about economics, television talks to you about economics in a certain way, again, using this sort of language, this terminology of the economists. Right? It's designed to make you feel dumb.
Yeah.
Right? But when you learn about Austrian economics, it's like somebody has successfully explained algebra to you.
Yeah. And suddenly you're like, oh, I get it.
And also you get to return to some fundamentals that you thought had gone the way of the dodo. Like, it is supply and demand. It really is supply and demand.
I've heard of that.
Like, if you don't have enough supply for the demand, then the price is going to go up because there's more demand. Or if you create more of a thing, or there's more competition, and now that thing is abundant, well, everybody's going to lower their prices because now there's more competition, and that's how prices come down.
Yeah.
Right? These are like very rudimentary, fundamental things that most people learn kindergarten to fifth grade.
I was going to say,
right?
I learned that stuff in third grade and then never again.
Yeah, but it's all true, right? And that's the basis. I'm being a little generous here, but like that's sort of the basis of Austrian economics. It really these are the fundamental tenets of how the economy works: supply and demand, and then personal value. Right. Again, I might think something is worth $500 today, but tomorrow it might be worth $1,000 to me. Right. A computer cannot predict that because it doesn't know my situation. It doesn't know what's going on in my life to make me want to pay more for a thing where, like yesterday, I was only willing to pay half.
We're going to go to the phones. I've got an unscreened caller from Bartlett, Texas. Unscreened caller, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Austrian economics is so ridiculous.
It's going to be scrotum again.
Crap.
It's scrotum.
Scrotum? Is this a new caller?
No, it's Skeeter.
Same Skeeter?
Yeah, he only gets one call a day. So.
Oh, man, you only get one call a night. Great to hear from you. We're going to go to the phone where we've got Rob in Vermont. Rob, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, me, Rob.
Hey, so I've got a question for you. I've been using, these AI bots, and I'm learning that whatever you feed it, as long as the truth, you'll get an honest answer back.
Okay.
And I don't think that that's a bad thing.
So if you ask, are you saying if you ask straightforward questions, you get honest answers back? Because what?
I think so, yeah. Because, if you fed it, a bunch of lies, and it's only going to respond back to what you give it. It's what it seems like to me. I'm not an expert in this, but it's just a feeling that I get.
If you did feed it nothing but truths, which I think they're trying to do with these large language models, where they feed it tons and tons of text. Again, the AI is not getting nuance or any of those things that typically come up in a conversation.
But who decides what the truth is?
Exactly, and they're just taking facts that they believe, whoever fed it into it, are going to be true, but again...
Yeah, like for example, Rob, if you fed one of these chat bots, these AIs, if you fed them the fact that Lemmy is the greatest bass player of all time, Lemmy from Motorhead.
It is.
Right?
That's the truth.
Like somebody might disagree with you because somebody might think Les Claypool is the best bass player of all time.
Well, yeah.
You're
making it tough.
So, like, who decides what the truth is?
Well, I mean, the audience, really.
But that's the thing. AI will sometimes answer one way, but the idea, and what we were talking about before, was AI hallucinating. Is you ask it who's the greatest bass player of all time, and they say, absolutely, it was Ringo Starr. That's an example of AI hallucinating. It just made something up that sounded good, but it bore no correspondence to reality. And people will see that, and somebody will ask that question, and they'll go, "Oh man, I didn't even know Ringo Starr played bass. Wow, I got to get Siri, give me a list of all of Ringo Starr's greatest bass clips." And they get clips of bass drums.
Right, yeah.
Well, the other thing that I'm hearing, too, is that these AI bots are going to put lawyers out of business.
Well, one would hope, just because I'm not really fond of lawyers.
I can type into this bot is I can type in, RSA numbers and statutes and stuff like that, and it'll come back and tell me what it is.
It'll be helpful for you researching that, but one of the things that was in the original article was lawyers using AI and then going to court and finding out that the answers that they were given by a chatbot didn't hold true in court, and them getting in trouble with judges and stuff like that because they were misrepresenting the law. So in all of these things, I think it's real important to still be careful. I mean, these are early days of AI. No matter how much they try to tell you that this stuff's ready for prime time, check your sources. Hey, Rob, great to hear from you, man. But he brings up interesting points that, I think that people should be rightfully suspicious of it, and I just hope they remain as suspicious of this as you should politicians.
And I think it's misnamed, right?
Yeah.
Like calling it AI, artificial intelligence, it's not what it is.
It's scripts.
Yeah.
It is responses. It's a response tree.
Yeah.
If this is asked, then answer this way. If this is asked, answer that way.
Right. It is.
Or look it up in this table.
In my mind, it's the verbalization of an internet search.
Yeah.
Right. So your favorite internet search thing, where you type a question in, or you're looking for a product, or you're like, oh yeah, things that end with this, or give me synonyms for this word. Right. It's just now it's a voice interface for that.
Right. And I think that's a great point. And I think we, at least from my point of view, I agree with you 100%. This is not artificial intelligence. No. It is a computer program that's made to, it doesn't pass a Turing test.
Right.
It is not a self-conscious thinking or a self-conscious being.
Yeah, it's not
which
sentient.
Is what I think of. Yeah, and sentience to me is what I believe artificial intelligence will eventually evolve into.
Yeah.
We will reach a singularity and all that. But this is just really good chatbots, or good or not. I don't know. It remains to be seen. We got Sarah in New Mexico. Sarah, how the roads out there?
What? Did you hear that? They're gonna make a movie about the 11 murdered women on the west side with a fetus, And then guess who's going to be the star role?
Wait.
The
West Side of what?
West Side of what?
And what about the fetus?
Okay, remember I talked about those. They found 11 murdered women on the West Side, and then one of them was pregnant.
Give
and they
us
still
some
haven't caught the
context.
murderer.
The West Side of what? Albuquerque?
Yes, the West Side murderers, and Mel Gibson's going to play the police, and then the 50 Cent
murder
is going to be one of the police officers trying to solve this crime, and then the families are mad because they just never asked anybody, the police or the families, whether they could make a movie.
Is Mel Gibson gonna co-star with like a black man who's too old for this crap?
I think they need to bring Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, he plays the police. They're going to be the leading stars. But
why do you think that they need to ask the families of the people who were murdered permission to make a movie about them?
Or the police?
Well, with the police, they could screw up the case if they can't give too much information, or they'll figure out ways to swarm out of the criminals, the murderers.
Did they ever find the murderer or the
huh?
murderers? Has anyone been charged with these crimes?
Not yet. That's what I'm saying. They can't really put together a complete charge, and they might blow it. They might give out. Hey, if you want $100,000, if you have a lead to catch this murderer, you could win the $100,000 if you're interested.
You know, a movie with somebody like Mel Gibson slated to be the star is going to have a lot of money thrown at it, and that money is going to motivate a whole bunch of people, writers and producers, to go do a bunch of investigating that the police certainly aren't motivated to do. It might actually speed the case along that they're making a movie about this.
Right. And all the people that are going to probably see this movie are going to be very interested in this, and you're going to it's just like what's found more lost children other than what was the show with what's his name? Oh God, I'm just having a senior moment.
Is it the kid Adam? Whatever?
Yes.
Yeah. America's Most Wanted.
America's Most Wanted. Why would that not be a good thing?
Well, the whole point is that I want to drive it in that New Mexico is horrible for human trafficking. I think the pimps kill these girls. They were on substance and on drugs, and I think they had a pimp, and for whatever reason, they hate women. Their mothers were a prostitute when they were growing up, and they decided to murder all these women.
How do you know all this?
I mean, that's usually the typical the type that do all these kind of stuff.
So you're making assumptions?
And I was just wondering how she was going to fit traffic into this. But she did it.
Human trafficking. Trafficking women. Yeah, traffic. It's it's wonderful. Yeah,
no, it's horrible. Wait, does that mean if I put up certain flashing lighted signs on my property, and some women come onto my property, that they'll obey those signs?
Well, it's kind of different kind of trafficking.
Oh, I see. Okay, very well.
Prostitution.
But I think the core thing is you don't want this movie to be made because it could negatively impact what the police are trying to do to solve this crime.
That's correct.
And what we're saying is when things get huge publicity that they're more likely to be solved because of a tip from a regular citizen than by the police. And how long has this been going on with this reward? And they've made it nowhere.
I think it's been about, I don't know about if it got jacked up to 100,000, but they're trying to solve this for 15 years or something.
Well, I hope it gets solved because I don't want to hear about anybody getting murdered. Sarah, thank you for the call. If you know anything about that, please call us and we will try to pass it on to the correct authorities. That's it for us. This is Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way